Hello, my friends. Hello to all of you in the US who have a day off today for Labor Day. I hope you're enjoying your day off and you're relaxing. What better way to celebrate Day than for me to work and for you to enjoy? So I'm glad so many of you could be here today. Today's also the big day of standouts on the Karen Reed case, not only nationwide, but I believe worldwide. I already can tell there's an issue with StreamYard because there's a huge latency, a huge delay right now on YouTube. So I don't know. Maybe you guys are breaking the internet again today. Are you? Are you out there breaking the internet? Hello to Canada. Today is Monday, September 2nd, 2024. It's officially the last day of summer, after which you're not supposed to wear white anymore. White jeans or white pants anyway, but I don't care. I don't play by the rules, as you can see. If you've been here for a while, you know that I don't believe in rules. Apparently, neither do the Massachusetts State Police. We're going to talk about Sandra Birchmore today, and I've linked below in the description of this video the first show that I did on Sandra Birchmore. Oh, did Baker have the same problem today? Yeah, it's whack. Something's going on with the internet. Who knows what's going to happen today, you guys? I don't know. I've linked in the video description the first video that I did on Sandra Birchmore, which was well over a month ago. Let me just check the date on that. And during that stream, we went over, and it was a pretty deep dive. July 7th was that show. Wow, it was almost 2 months ago. So what we did during that show is we reviewed all of the initial Canton police reports because Sandra Birchmore died in Canton, and therefore they were the first responding department. We went over all of the Canton police reports, and we went over the civil lawsuit that her family has filed for wrongful death against Farwell and the Stoughton PD. And that was a pretty deep dive. And today, what I want to do, because praise be, Matthew Farwell has finally been indicted federally for killing a witness and staging Sandra Birchmore's suicide, posing her body and staging the scene to make it look like a suicide. Today, what I want to do with you is go over, and I'm not going to read it in its entirety. It is the motion for detention to keep him locked up in federal prison. And that's where we're going to get a lot of details about the things that this monster did to Sandra Birchmore from the time she was 15 years old, although he started grooming her at about the time that she was around the time she was 12 years old, when she was a participant in a youth program run by police for children who were interested in becoming police officers and had an interest in learning about the law. Her trust was violated by this police officer slash monster, Matthew Farwell, and his twin brother, and perhaps another person in charge of the program who was, I believe at the time, also police officer Robert Devine. This is a disgusting, disgusting story, but it's so important for us to talk about because it happens every single day to children by people who are in positions of power and control, and it's horrific. And thank God the FBI stepped in, because what we're going to learn today when we go through this motion for pretrial detention and the supporting affidavit, what we're going to learn, because we're also going to go through the Massachusetts State Police reports that were filed and drafted contemporaneous with the finding of Sandra Birchmore's body, in which they ruled it a suicide all those years ago, back in February of 2021. And we're going to see, because we're going to analyze them together, that what we're reading about in this federal motion that was just filed on August 28th of 2024, just last week, it's not new information. This is all information that the Massachusetts State Police had when they were investigating this case. And I would say it boggles my mind, but it makes me physically ill that no charges were ever brought against Matthew Farwell, who, as you know, had impregnated Sandra Birchmore. She was pregnant with his child at the time that he killed her and made it look like a suicide. None of this stuff is new information. It's just being affirmed by a different agency, by a different investigator, but they had all of this stuff from the beginning. And it's revolting and it's sickening. And you know me, and you know that I have 5 kids, and you know these stories about kids are really tough for me, and you know that I handled the cases against the Catholic Church for many, many, many victims of clergy sex abuse right here in New York against the Rockville Centre Diocese when this scandal broke against the church all the way back in 2002. And I'm not here to bash the Catholic Church because I am Catholic, but I'm here to tell you that this happens every day, that it's still happening. And the fact that this was still covered up in 2021 should shake you to your core. But if you're from Boston, it might not shock you, because do you remember only 2 years ago, well, a little over 2 years ago, in April of 2022, anybody know who Patrick Rose is? Let me know if you're familiar with that case in the chat. Patrick Rose was the former head of the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association. And back in April of 2022, he pled guilty to 21 counts of child R and child SA. He admitted in court to SAing 6 children over a 27-year period. He was the head of the union, my friends, and he was in Boston, and they knew about it, and they covered it up, and it's revolting. So if you're from Boston and you're familiar with that case, or you're not, take a look at it later, not now. It was handled in Suffolk County, Massachusetts, not to be confused with Suffolk County, New York. The district attorney at the time, Kevin Hayden, called the crimes monstrous acts. 6 victims gave statements during the hearing. And some of these children that he assaulted were 6, 8 years old. And he's currently serving 10 years, at least 10 years in prison, followed by 10 years probation. And I would submit to you that I don't think that's enough. Because anybody that would rape a 6 or 8-year-old child, that child is handed a life sentence. Okay. That child is never going to be able to overcome that, will likely never be able to live a normal life, will never be able to trust anyone. And it's disgusting. Yep. So, like it or not, law enforcement in the Massachusetts area has been covering up things like this for many, many, many years. In fact, they were alerted about Patrick Rose all the way back in the 90s. All the way back in the 90s, something like 96 or 97. And we're not here to talk about this today. I don't know. I haven't heard of it. But I'll pull up the receipts for you because I know you guys like receipts. I just closed the tab because, like, as always, I have 7 million tabs open. Here it is. This is going back to we like receipts here, you know. We're document based or fact based. I'm an attorney. That's how I roll. That's how you guys like it. And here it is. Former Boston Police Union president pleads guilty to SA and child R charges. You can't say these words on YouTube, but we need to talk about it, and they're going to strike me, and it's okay because we have a sponsor for today's show. And that's the great thing about having a sponsor, is that I don't have to worry about YouTube censorship. A lot of people were wondering, because I think Aiden Carney posted on Twitter that he thought I blocked him on YouTube. It had nothing to do with me. I think he's been banned from YouTube for a week. So I don't know if they are playing games with him. I don't know. But YouTube is, it's turning into a far worse censorship platform than it ever was. But this article is from WBUR Newsroom, April 25th of 2022, and this was when he pled guilty. But there's plenty of articles before that you can find. He pled guilty to 21 counts of child R and SA, and he was only given at least 10 years in prison, followed by 10 years of probation. So take a look at that case if you're from the area, even if you're not, if you're outraged by that as well, so am I. And I think you all should be, because it's horrific. So what happened last week was, Farwell was arrested by the SWAT team. I'm going to show you a little clip of that, because when I covered this last week, we only covered really the press conference, and I think that's really, and the federal indictment, which was only 4 pages long. But what I wanted to play for you was some footage of his arrest. All right, so let's just take a quick look at that. I know that you've probably been watching a lot of other creators on this in the past week, and a lot of people have probably read these documents to you, which is why we're not going to go through them word for word. I'm going to give you the gist of it. I'm going to try and handle it as delicately and as sensitively as I can, because it's horrifying what's written in these affidavits. But let's just take a look at the arrest, which happened in Revere in a shopping center. And it's about damn time. This is Boston 25 News from 4 days ago.
This story has played out in several Massachusetts communities. Let's show you a map right now. Is in Stoughton is where Matthew Farwell met Sandra Birchmore and allegedly groomed her as a sexual predator. In Canton is where Birchmore was found dead, and what the FBI has said was a murder and not a suicide. And in Revere is where Farwell was arrested this morning by a SWAT team. Boston 25 News reporter Drew Caritas, you are there for us tonight.
Mark, people here at the Northgate Shopping Center in Revere couldn't believe their eyes when the FBI closed in and took the former Stoughton police detective into custody as he was driving a gravel truck. The details that later surfaced about why he was taken into custody made it that much more shocking.
I want to know about why he was driving a gravel truck, and whether or not he got his commercial driver's license through that MSP scandal, which is another case that we covered, where MSP officers who were in charge of giving out commercial driver licenses would give them away to people for such favors as plunge pools, mailboxes, driveways, and other favors.
Cell phone video from a Revere strip mall shows the takedown of former Stoughton detective Matthew Farwell after his indictment in the murder of a pregnant woman more than 3 years ago.
People came in the store and said that the FBI was out front arresting someone, so I went outside and just seen a bunch of cops running around.
Chris, who doesn't want to use his last name, was working at the Northgate Shopping Center when the FBI swarmed the property and arrested the former police officer who was wearing a t-shirt and jeans and behind the wheel of a gravel hauler.
I don't have any respect for someone that would do that, especially to a child.
He and others who watched the scene unfold say they are blown away by the accusations that Farwell groomed Sandra Birchmore when she was a teen and sexually abused her before staging her suicide in 2021.
It's a crying shame that we have these cops doing this stuff behind closed doors. I think he's a clown. He should never been doing what he was doing. And it's out of hand.
Later in the day, others who learned of the arrest and call themselves supporters of justice showed up at the Moakley Federal Courthouse in Boston to see it firsthand.
It just breaks my heart, because she would have been, her and her baby would have been fine. They would have been absolutely fine.
Just because you're a police officer with a badge, you can't get away with everything.
And some folks who saw the arrest go down say they saw black smoke rising from the commotion right here in the middle of this parking lot, which they believe was caused by some type of diversionary device, potentially a flashbang. We still don't know what Farwell was doing here in this parking lot or why he was driving a gravel truck. We're live in Revere tonight. Drew Caritas for your local station, Boston 25 News.
Truth.
And there you have it. The takedown. Only 10 years is a disgrace, Maureen. An absolute disgrace, given the life sentence he brought upon his victims. Yep. In my opinion, from all of the work that I've done throughout my 30-year legal career representing victims of all kinds of horrific abuse, I don't think guys like him can be rehabilitated. There's no rehabilitation for that. You can't change a person like that. And statistics show that by the time a pedo is caught, they've already abused 100 times. That's the statistic. It's real. It's horrific. And it happens every single day. And we need to teach our children about it. Everyone needs to teach their children about it, because although it's a tough topic and it's hard to talk about, it needs to be talked about. And we're here to talk about it. I'm here with you to talk about it. So thank you, Maureen Francis, by the way, for your Cash App this morning. So nice and very generous of you. And also, Galen, I don't know if you're here, but I saw that you sent me a Venmo earlier before the show and said, thanks for all my hard work. And Maureen said, thanks for doing a Labor Day stream. And really, what better way is there to spend the day than with you guys to explain to you what is going on with Matthew Farwell and why? And why didn't the Massachusetts State Police rule this a homicide during their investigation? And why did Michael Morrissey, the district attorney of Norfolk County, because Stoughton and Canton happen to be neighboring towns, it's all under his jurisdiction, why did he fail to bring charges against Matthew Farwell when it was so obvious to anybody who reads the police reports and the witness statements taken by the Massachusetts State Police? Because they had possession of Sandra Birchmore's laptop and all of the messages contained therein for at least a year, going back at least a year. So none of this is new. And at the end of this stream, I'm going to ask you what you think. Incompetence, corruption, or cover up? What say you? Let's listen to some of the details. And as you know, I just wanted to give you the future dates on this. So Farwell's being held. He was taken away by U.S. Marshals. He's being held until his detention hearing, which is going to be held in September 12th. They're going to hold a hearing for his detention. I don't think they should let him out. Do you? That's going to be September 12th. And then they're going to have their first scheduling conference on his case on October 17th. That's going to be the initial status conference. As we've discussed in the prior stream, this is a charge that could entitle him to the death penalty federally. But the charge here is killing a witness. So there's no charge for killing the unborn child, because these are federal charges, and that's how apparently they had to get him. Life in prison or death. Thanks, Renee, for becoming a new member. Thank you, Kathy, for being a member for a month. Woohoo. Afton Forehead, can the feds go after others involved? Yes, they can, and we'll see what happens when we go through this together, and I'll tell you what I think, or who I think they might go after. Hi, Fairy Raven. Channel interviewed Fanning last year, and he explained Sandra's demise was because women get emotional. Really, Fairy Raven? That's disgusting. Thank you for that. Pilgrim Shadow, thanks for the 10. Wonderful to see you too. Thanks for going live on Labor Day. Summertime done, come and gone. My, oh my. The good old Grateful Dead reference to U.S. Blues on Labor Day. We're all confused. Yeah, we are all confused about this one. Thank you, Wendy, darling, for your super sticker. All right. So the U.S. Attorney's Office has made a motion. The title of this case is the United States of America versus Matthew Farwell, because it's a federal case. And they were the only ones with cojones enough to bring charges against him. So what they did was make a motion for his pretrial detention, which, as I said, is going to be held. They're going to have a hearing on that. These federal cases are not televised, so it's not going to be televised, unfortunately. But let's pull this up. The motion's about 18 pages. We're not going to go through every single paragraph I'll get my voice eventually. We're not going to go through every single paragraph because I don't think we need to do that. You guys have heard enough about this, I'm sure, already if you've been following this case. It's revolting. It's shocking. It's triggering. So please, if you are triggered by this subject, please, take a break if you need it, because it's horrific. It's just about as horrific as it could get, in my opinion. See if I can move this to the right of my screen. And there we go. While I'm reading, it's hard for me to watch the chat. So please, if you want to save your questions for after or when we take a break, that's probably best. This is the United States motion for and memorandum in support of pretrial detention. This is 18 pages. I believe the supporting affidavit is something like 45 pages. Let's just put that down. There will be reporters in the courtroom. Yes, absolutely they will. And some of them live tweet, so we will know what happens. But let's hope they keep him in club fed for quite some time, which is exactly where he belongs. For those of you unfamiliar with the facts of this case, defendant Matthew Farwell, a former Stoughton police officer, has been charged with killing Sandra Birchmore to prevent her from communicating information about his commission or possible commission of federal crimes. The government moves to detain Farwell pending trial because he's a danger to the community and poses a serious risk of flight and obstruction. The court is authorized to conduct a detention hearing and detain Farwell on each of those independent bases because Farwell has been charged with a crime of violence that carries a mandatory life sentence. That hearing, as I said, is going to be held on September 12th. It was supposed to be the 10th, but they moved it to the 12th. And they go through their arguments. They say, first, there's a serious risk that if he's released, he will obstruct or attempt to obstruct justice. That risk is not merely theoretical. On February 1st, 2021, Farwell killed Birchmore, a young pregnant woman who he had spent years sexually exploiting. Farwell's grisly crime was designed to conceal forever the truth about his years of criminal conduct targeting Birchmore. Moreover, even apart from his murder of Birchmore, Farwell has tried to destroy and conceal evidence of his criminal conduct. Prior to her death, Farwell has tried to destroy and conceal evidence of his criminal conduct. Prior to her death, Farwell instructed Birchmore to delete from her phone evidence that they had relations before her 16th birthday, which makes it statutory R in the state of Massachusetts. The age of consent is 16. After the murder, he researched how to delete data from his own phone. And he took steps to conceal the murder, including by repositioning Birchmore's lifeless body and staging her apartment to make the young woman's death appear to be a suicide, and lying to Massachusetts state police detectives who were initially responsible for investigating Birchmore's death. You're going to notice here, and even during the press conference, you noticed when Josh Levy gave his presser that we watched together last week, he has not placed any blame on the Massachusetts State Police investigation or investigators or district attorney. That's not what he's there to do, but I think we can come to our own conclusions about that when we look at the Massachusetts State Police reports contemporaneous with this motion for pretrial detention. And you can tell me what you think. They're saying he lied to the Massachusetts State Police detectives. I'm going to tell you, they had all the information that they needed, whether he lied to them or not. Second, Farwell's release would pose a profound danger to the community. He has been charged with the intentional premeditated murder of a young person he knew for years. He strangled her to death when he knew she was several weeks pregnant. He did so while serving as a police officer, and after using that position of trust and authority to groom and sexually exploit her for years, beginning when she was just 15 years old. There are no conditions of release that will protect the community from a defendant whose conduct reveals such an indifference to human life. Third, Farwell is a serious risk of non-appearance. As described in detail below, the murder followed a report to Stoughton police that disclosed aspects of Farwell's illicit sexual relationship with Birchmore. With Farwell on notice that he could soon face consequences for his criminal conduct, he decided to kill Birchmore. Today, the potential consequences could hardly be more severe or imminent. Farwell faces a mandatory life sentence for killing Birchmore. The weight of the evidence is overwhelming. These circumstances provide him with significant disincentive to appear for trial. As such, there are no conditions that will reasonably assure he will appear at trial to face the evidence and consequences of his conduct. Here's what I find interesting. The weight of the evidence is overwhelming. I know many of you have read all of the documents, and many of you have been in possession of these documents for years, and many of you have been fighting for justice for Sandra Birchmore for years. The weight of the evidence is overwhelming, and they had MSP had all the evidence you're going to see. You're going to see they had it all. There's nothing new here in this federal investigation, and if you think that there is some new stuff in the federal investigation, please let me know. Because if there is anything really new, I haven't found it. They're dealing with the same facts. They're dealing with the same extractions of phones and computers. It's all been there this entire time. And if the evidence is overwhelming now, it was overwhelming then. And yet, I have a really hard time understanding why charges weren't brought about against him. And if you have thoughts about that, save them for later because I can't watch the chat while I'm reading to you. Statement of facts. So here are the facts that the government says back up this case, these charges. Farwell is 38 years old and resides in northeastern Mass with his spouse and children. And by the way, within 13 hours of him killing Sandra Birchmore, his wife gave birth. Yep. Both he and his spouse possess licenses to carry firearms. There are 10 firearms registered to their home address. Farwell's professional background. He served in the U.S. Army from 2004 to 2008. During that time, he served as an explosives expert. Farwell became a sworn police officer in 2008. He first served from 2008 to 2012 as a police officer for the town of Wellesley, Massachusetts. 2012, he became a Stoughton police officer, a position he held until he resigned on April 1st of 2022. I'm going to break from this document for a minute to tell you that there is also a 60-page report from the town of Stoughton, internal affairs report that was issued in August of 2022, which has some pretty damning evidence against him and his brother and Divine as well. Norfolk County District Attorney's Office was also in possession of all of that information, going back to when this report was rendered by Deputy Chief Holmes of Stoughton Police Department all the way back in August of 2022, which would have been about a year and a half after the murder of Sandra Birchmore. And here we sit 3.5 years later, and finally it took the feds to make an arrest in this case. It's mind-blowing. Then they go on to talk about the Stoughton Police Explorers Academy. Prior to 2017, Stoughton Police Department operated the Stoughton Police Explorers Academy, here and after the Police Explorers, which was a quasi-paramilitary program designed to expose youth participants to various aspects of policing. Farwell was a volunteer for the program when he was a Wellesley police officer. After he joined the Stoughton PD, Farwell became a Police Explorers instructor. March of 2010, Birchmore applied to be a participant in the police program, Police Explorers. At the time, she was 12 years old. She began participating in the program in or around the spring of 2010. She remained in the program through 2016. Farwell was her instructor during that time period. The offense. Farwell groomed and sexually exploited Birchmore when she was a child. As a police officer, Farwell groomed and exploited Birchmore when she was a child. As early as 2012, he began communicating with Birchmore online, including befriending her on Facebook. At the time, he was 26 years old. She was just 15. And that is why There are some aggravating factors at play here because he was more than 10 years her senior. And because of his position of power and trust, as it says here. While using the internet to lay the groundwork for his child exploitation, Farwell would also meet Birchmore at the Stoughton Public Library, where he would groom her under the guise of providing academic tutoring. Ultimately, he engaged in sex acts with Birchmore, violating the Massachusetts statutory R law by having intercourse with her in 2013 when she was 15. This act of statutory rape had several attendant aggravating factors, such as the age disparity between Farwell and Birchmore and Farwell's position of power and trust. Let's break from this for a second because I'm sure you guys have a lot of things to say. Dreamer Thinker, crowdsourced investigation of medical examiners in Massachusetts is needed. Too much overtime pay, too many external views versus actual autopsies. Looks like a controlled group. That's an interesting point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Also of interest here is that, this brings into play, and you're going to see, because we're going to go over what they say about the medical examiner's report, saying the manner of death is suicide and the cause of death was asphyxiation. But remember Michael Proctor's testimony and Michael Proctor's group messages during the Karen Reed trial and during his testimony, how the other people in the group text messages, including Trooper Fanning, who is heavily involved in the Sandra Birchmore investigation, was on that chain message with Proctor, DeChico, and I think Buchanan, and tell me who else, if I'm missing anyone. When Proctor was being sort of teased for not being able to get the medical examiner in the John O'Keefe death to change the manner of death to homicide from undetermined, and how they were calling him a rookie and, oh, come on, you should have had me do it, which leads me and anybody with half a brain or common sense to believe that this is something that may have been going on for quite some time in the Massachusetts State Police. Medical examiners being strong-armed into giving a manner of death that would help the investigation or help cover up the actual perpetrator. What say you? Doesn't seem like you need that much of a brain to figure that out. It's just common sense. So all we need to do here is think with just common sense, because you don't have to be an attorney or a doctor or a brain surgeon to figure this kind of stuff out. Thank you, Dreamer Thinker. Thank you, Melly, for coming in and also for your super sticker. Thanks, Arlene, for your super sticker. Super chat. Josh Levy says the FBI is looking into numerous suicides. Do you think they could be investigating John O'Keefe's partner's death? Thank you, Arlene. That is a great question that I don't know the answer to. But it's one that comes to mind when you think about that, right? I don't know enough about his partner's death to speak intelligently about it, so I can't really speculate about that now. But it's a great point, Arlene. Thank you, Mrs. Bucket, for being a member for 4 months. You are so very kind and generous. And before we move on with our reading of this motion and more facts that are disgusting and horrific and YouTube hates them, let's just take let's hear a quick word from our sponsor, because it's because of our sponsor that we're able to talk about these tough topics. If you guys don't know about the major hack that went on recently, every person in America's social security number was leaked to the dark web, which can lead to horrific things like identity theft, which can ruin your credit and other things. My sponsor can help you with that. I use my sponsor, Aura, and because of that, they told me that my social security number was on the dark web, and they told me exactly what to do to take steps to prevent it. So if you wouldn't mind, let's hear a word from our sponsor real quick before we get back to the tough topic at hand. Thank you. Today's video is sponsored by Aura, and it's a really important time to be talking about them because hackers may have stolen the social security numbers of every American. Over 2.9 billion records were stolen from National Public Data, which offers personal information to employers, private investigators, staffing agencies, and others doing background checks. These stolen records include a person's full name, address, date of birth, social security number, and phone number, along with alternate names and birth date. And members of this hacker group have reportedly released this information on the dark web for free. I don't know if you've ever had your identity stolen, but I've had clients who've had their identity stolen. And not only is it a major hassle, but oftentimes before you find out, it's too late. The damage can take years to undo, and it's a hassle that you definitely do not want to deal with. So if you haven't been taking precautions before with your personal information online, this should be a huge wake-up call. You've never been more vulnerable online than you are right now. But I'm not too worried about it because I use Aura. Aura alerts me if they find my phone number, my email, my social security number, or any other personal information on the dark web. They're going to let me know fast if anyone tries to use this information to access my credit or bank accounts. They give me up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen. They also provide a bunch of other features to keep you safe online, all inside one app. And you can go to my link at www.aura.com/Melanie Little to try it for free for 14 days. That'll be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal information or data has been exposed. I highly recommend you do this right now because not only is national public data not going to do anything to help you, they probably aren't even going to face any repercussions for this breach. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches. And if you don't want to either, you want to go to my link, www.aura.com/Melanie Little, to try 2 weeks for free. You can thank me later. You can thank me later. You also get a military grade encrypted VPN, which is great because if you have a VPN, it can cost you more than like $12 a month to get the VPN. So I suggest you do it. Go Buffs. We did win that game. We should have won that game by a lot more points, but thanks, Alicia Gallegos. But go Buffs, as I say. I am a Buff forever and ever. And yes, it's going to be a very exciting season because next week's game against Nebraska is also going to be on national television. So for the many hundreds of years since I graduated from college, it's been very difficult for me to watch my team without having some weird random, Pac-10 channel that nobody had and no bars even had. So go Buffs. All right, my friends, let's move on. Farwell also continued to exploit Birchmore when she became an adult. And while he remained employed as a police officer, building off the years of grooming, he later cultivated a controlling and sometimes abusive relationship with Birchmore. He tracked her location with his cell phone, and as voluminous text messages demonstrate, he engaged in sexual violence. I'm going to say it again, a little bit louder for those in the back. Massachusetts State Police had all of these messages. I know a lot of people have been saying that he didn't find, Guarino, we called him Trooperino, couldn't find 30,000 text messages. He didn't find them on Farwell's phone, and that is true, because Farwell wiped his phone before he handed it over voluntarily. But guess where they were? They were on Sandra Birchmore's laptop. And I'm going to show you the proof of that too, because I come with receipts. Farwell also had sex with Birchmore while he was on duty and being paid by the town of Stoughton. So that also rises to the level, as if we didn't need enough rising to the level. In December of 2020, Farwell learned that he had impregnated Birchmore. In October 2020, Birchmore told Farwell that she wanted a child of her own. Farwell and Birchmore reached an agreement. He would try to impregnate Birchmore in exchange for her silence about his criminal conduct. And so this is where the federal charges come in. The federal theory is that because Sandra Birchmore was a witness to his crimes of child SA, having relations with her while he was on the job and being paid by Stoughton PD, And his years-long extramarital affair, his killing of her made her a witness. And that's how they were able to backdoor these charges in. Because, as we discussed, Norfolk County DA's office wasn't going to do it. And remember also those frantic letters Michael Marcy was writing to the feds back in, I think they started in May of 2023. You can correct me if I'm wrong on the date. It was before Karen Reed's trial. Marcy was writing those frantic letters to the U.S. Attorney's Office, like, we know that people have been getting federal subpoenas. We know. What are you investigating? What are you investigating? What are you freaking out? Well, you can bet they were investigating Sandra Birchmore. And we know they were also investigating Officer John O'Keefe's death. Now, the desperation in Michael Marcy's letters really rears its ugly head, and you can see why. All this stuff was going on behind the scenes, and they've got everything, all of it. Oh, Ed Wallace is here. Hi, Ed Wallace. Oh, Chap's wifey is having a bladder removal surgery on October 29th. We will send all the prayers for you. All the prayers for Chap's wifey. All the prayers. Yeah. Karen, I wonder what else Sandra knew. Yep. Ed Wallace is here. Ed Wallace is here. Hi, Ed. We're working on Labor Day, Ed. Gen Xer Meg says when they had Farwell's phone, he then used his work phone to Google if deleted messages come up and celebrate. Yeah, we're going to get to that, as if they wouldn't search that phone too. They're saying they let him resign as well. In late December 2020, just a month before Birchmore died, she learned that she was pregnant. Birchmore told Farwell that he was the child's father, and Farwell responded poorly. He became physically violent with Birchmore. She told multiple friends that Farwell had pushed her and shoved her, grabbed objects from her hand, and put her in a chokehold. In January of 2021, Farwell learned that information about his years-long illicit affair or sexual contact with Birchmore had been disclosed to the Stoughton Police Department and others. We're going to find that out too, because guess who interviewed that person? The Massachusetts State Police. Because that person claimed that Sandra Birchmore owed her money, and she got mad and she called Stoughton PD. And when they wouldn't take a report from her, she disclosed this relationship between Sandra Birchmore and one of their officers, Matthew Farwell. What if somebody did something about that call? Maybe this could have been prevented, because that call came in before her death. In January 2021, Farwell learned that despite Birchmore getting the pregnancy she wanted, he would not be able to control her or the information that she possessed about his crimes. On January 20th of 2021, a friend of Birchmore's, a friend of Birchmore's called the Stoughton Police Department and disclosed information about Farwell's sexual contact with Birchmore. When a Stoughton Police Department employee told him about the call, Farwell again responded poorly. He angrily demanded that the employee never tell anyone about the information. So what did Stoughton PD do as soon as they got the call from that person? They told Farwell about it. And that was January 20th of 2021. Birchmore was killed by Farwell on February 1st. 12 days later. In late January 2021, Farwell began planning the murder. Oops, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Of Sandra Birchmore. By late January 2021, text messages between Farwell and Birchmore reveal that Farwell was enraged by what he perceived as Birchmore not upholding her end of the pregnancy for silence agreement. Moreover, he had learned Birchmore had shared with at least one other person some of the incriminating details about his relationship with Birchmore, and that information had been disclosed to his employer, a law enforcement agency. In a text on January 20th, 2021, he asked Birchmore, "What else do I have to worry about now? Which other friend will do something tomorrow?" An allusion to his fear that she may disclose more information about his possible commission of federal crimes coercion and enticement, deprivation of rights under color of law, and wire fraud. On January 24th, 2021, Farwell started to take important steps to obstruct justice by killing Birchmore. He asked Birchmore for a key to her apartment after previously being reluctant to having in his possession that kind of tangible proof of their relationship. And he asked Birchmore to keep it a secret that she had given him a key. On January 26th of 2021, Farwell also started casing Birchmore's apartment, the future crime scene, searching for places to carry out the murder. He inspected her bathroom and closet, places where items could be hung. His behavior was strange enough that Birchmore told multiple friends that she was concerned. Where's the evidence of that? In her text messages that were found on her laptop the same day as her body was found. On February 1st, 2021, Farwell went to Birchmore's apartment wearing a mask and strangled her to death using a duffel bag strap. On February 1st, 2021, Farwell decided to act. For him, that day provided at least two advantages. A blizzard was approaching Greater Boston, ensuring that no one would notice Birchmore's absence from work for several days, because you may recall that Birchmore was a teacher's aide at one of the Sharon, Massachusetts public schools, and if there were snow days, she wouldn't have to go to work. And Farwell's wife was hours away from delivering their third child. Therefore, Farwell texted Birchmore to tell her that he was coming to her apartment. He entered her apartment wearing a face mask, despite being well known as resistant to COVID-19 mask mandates. And he murdered Birchmore, the 23-year-old pregnant woman he had exploited and used for years by strangling her to death. Within minutes of silencing Birchmore, video surveillance footage shows him leaving her apartment. Guess who else had that video surveillance footage? Yeah. Canton PD and the MSP. Same day they found her body. Additional evidence regarding Farwell's efforts to obstruct. Then they go on to say that he also he directed her to delete evidence of their relationship, any evidence that that he raped her when she was 15, and any evidence of sexual violence. And these are some messages that go back to February of 2019 and March of 2019 that are graphic and disgusting, but clearly prove that he took her virginity when she was 15 years old. Because the information surrounding those text messages, pretty clear, pretty explicit. Because in another text message conversation, they talk about the first time that they had relations. And he said he would have liked to have done it with her when she was even younger. And then he texts things to her like, please, delete this. Please clear out that part, baby. When she confirmed that she did so, he texted, good girl. He also wanted to ensure that she would delete any references to his penchant for violence. There's a lot of graphic details in here about messages between them, about how he had forcible intercourse, we'll call it, fantasies, and how he liked to act those out with her and role play with her. And they go into great detail to talk about those types of conversations between Sandra and Farwell. And there's a person 5 here. This person 5 is mentioned, who was a co-employee of his at Stoughton Police Department. Person 5 would be the person who received the phone call from Sandra Birchmore's friend to the Stoughton PD, wanting to file a report about Sandra owing this person money. And then when they refused to take a report and told her it was a civil matter, she said, oh, well, tell her boyfriend, that she's banging or whatever. Matthew Farwell, who's a detective in your department, that she owes me money. That's person number 5. Farwell directed person number 5, never to mention the topic to him again and not to tell anyone else. Farwell then began frantically texting with Birchmore. Again, 12 days before he murders her. He wrote, "You also told me no one knew about us. Yet this person claimed we are effing. You have no idea how bad what this person did is. I literally can't believe this is even real life. Like, what else do I have to worry about now? Which other friend will do something tomorrow?" Within days of the foregoing text messages, Farwell was asking Birchmore to give him a key to her apartment, but to keep it secret. Within days, he was scoping out her closets and bathrooms. And within 12 days, Birchmore was dead. And again, all of these text messages were in possession of the Massachusetts State Police. Oh, thank you, Suzanne, for your Cash App. That is so very sweet of you. Appreciate you so much. And Gerard, thank you, Gerard, for the Venmo, who says, "I refuse to contribute to Google." Thank you, because YouTube takes 30% of super chats. And thank you for the coffee fund, Gerard. I appreciate you so much. And yeah, YouTube takes 30% of super chats. So it's always like never expected that you guys would ever donate at all. But if you want to and you feel like it, Venmo, Cash App, even the Buy Me a Matcha thing is better because it's direct. It's direct to creator, and YouTube doesn't take a piece. YouTube also, holds on to your money and then tells you you're not advertiser friendly, and you may not get it. So that is what it is, and that's why we have a sponsor. So yay, Aura. After killing Birchmore, Farwell repositioned her body and staged her apartment to make it appear that Birchmore had committed suicide. And then they're going to describe that in more detail in the affidavit, which we can look at as well. What is interesting here is that it says, notwithstanding the fact that first responders found Birchmore in a seated position with a strap around her neck and doorknob. When we went over the Canton PD reports in the last show that I did on this, which is linked below, or the first show that I did on this, I should say, the first responders at Canton PD said that there was a scarf tied around her neck. And I don't know, Ed, you're here. Big difference between a scarf and a strap. Do details matter? Because it's crazy. Yeah, if not for that damn necklace, Mary, we're going to find that out too. Nikki Mickey. R and I fantasies are the 2 most frequent per research. The issue with this guy is that it wasn't just fantasy for him, it was his reality, right? And all of these messages that they had access to showed his violence and his choking fantasies and his forcible intercourse fantasies and the role playing. And it's no surprise that the guy had a thing for violence. Why would it be such a far leap to imagine that he may have staged this as a suicide? Go figure. So in this case, just like in the Karen Reed case, the feds hired their own expert, just like the crash daddies in the Karen Reed case. They hired I keep wanting to call him Dr. Spock, but his name is Dr. Smock. William Smock, who's a medical examiner with 40 years experience, and he looked at all of the information that the FBI gave him, and he determined that Birchmore's death was a homicide, citing the hyoid bone fracture in her neck, the pattern imprint injury on her chest, abrasions on her nose, and the broken necklace, among other evidence that led him to conclude with a reasonable degree of medical and scientific certainty that Birchmore's death was a homicide. These specific injuries and evidence are consistent with Farwell suffocating Birchmore by strangulation and then hanging her lifeless body from her closet doorknob, which he had inspected days earlier, to make it appear as if she took her own life. After the murder, Farwell searched for ways to conceal his years-long relationship with Birchmore and his communication with her on the day of the murder. And as we're going to see from the MSP reports that I have pulled up, Farwell did give limited consent to search his personal cell phone. However, on February 9th, he used his work cell phone to make and delete two Google searches. The first was, can deleted iMessages be recovered by Celebrite? Of course, he spelled it wrong. He spelled by, hi, H-Y, Haas long to dying cold. Then he searched and deleted, can you revoke consent in Massachusetts? After the murder, he lied to MSP detectives. They're saying his multiple false statements were a deliberate effort to minimize his relationship. Farwell falsely told detectives that his sexual relationship with Birchmore began in 2020. According to his own text messages with Birchmore, it actually began in 2013 when she was 15. They had it all. They had all of this. Farwell falsely told detectives he had only had sex with Birchmore 2 or 3 times in the previous year. According to text messages, he had sex with her at least 10 times in 13 months prior to her death. They're only talking about the 13 months prior to her death, which was exactly the number of months of text messages and social media that MSP recovered from Sandra's laptop. So there's nothing new here, folks. Nothing new here. But the MSP didn't think there was anything to see there either. Farwell falsely told detectives the last time he had sex with Birchmore was in October, attempting to avoid suspicion about whether he was the father of the child. However, the unborn child. However, text messages indicate that he met Birchmore to have sex after that date. It's all there. Lots of receipts. Farwell falsely told detectives that he had not seen Birchmore in the week before her death. However, he visited her apartment on January 29th of 2021. Farwell falsely told detectives that he had been trying to distance himself from Birchmore. However, approximately 10 days before her death, he asked her for a key to her apartment, told her he'd come over to give her hugs. About 3 days before her death, Farwell told her that he would engage in S activity with her. Let's take this down for a second, shall we? Because I want to take a look with you at Farwell's interview by the Massachusetts State Police. But first, let's take some questions. Jadzia, hello. It says, in Proctor's private group chat, there was a chief. He claimed that was a friend's nickname, but I wonder if it was actually their job title. Oh, like Chief Berkowitz? I think we all thought that during the trial, right? A lot of people have hypothesized that Berkowitz could have something to do with this. I don't know. If anybody has any more information on that, let me know. Chatter. Hospice Jess. This whole situation makes me wonder if John O'Keefe knew too much. Certainly does raise some red flags, right? Oh, Joseph Kane gifted 10 memberships. Thank you, Joseph, for being so kind and generous to this channel. And to those of you who are randomly selected by YouTube to receive them, welcome. I think you're going to like it here. Thanks, Joseph. So sweet. Lindsay, thanks for the super chat. Too many people are being silenced. Why? Ask yourselves why. Why in this little nook of Norfolk County, Massachusetts? This is going on. Are they this incompetent in every investigation or only in investigations that involve fellow police officers? Tanny. Thanks, Tanny, for the 10. I'm Catholic, so people usually roll their eyes when I say this, but we can't continue to ignore how pedos, you mean, impact our society. SA and abuse of minors is free for all to view online. It's not just kink, it's disgusting. Thank you, Tanny. Needs to be something done about that as well. We can't solve all the world's problems today, but we're sure as hell going to try to solve at least some in Massachusetts. Susan Costello, thank you so much for the $50 super sticker. You are, as always, so very kind and generous to me and to this channel, and I appreciate you so, so much. Let's turn now to the Massachusetts State Police report of the interview, Matthew Farwell. I think what we'll do is we'll go back and forth between the federal documents and the documents created by the MSP contemporaneous in time with the event. So right away, after Sandra Birchmore is killed and her death or suicide, as they're calling it, because they decided it was a suicide, by the way, within 4 hours of of appearing on the scene. Canton PD did. People started calling the Norfolk DA's office. Witnesses started calling with information. We're going to look at some of those. There's a lot of them. A lot of witnesses started calling with information. And all of those interviews were done by phone by the Massachusetts State Police. None of them were recorded. I mean, why should they be, right? So try and just, if you can, just try and it looks okay. We're mod short today. Oh, I see a bunch of mods here. Hi, Little Cupcake. Hi, Patronus Glow. Hi, Scott Messerschmidt. I know that Team Brittany is off today, and I told her to enjoy her day off today. And I think Scott's here as well. So thank you. We do have mods. Just try and just watch your language in the chat because, YouTube, blah, blah, blah. All right. So this report, and this is a situation that we notice a lot in the Karen Reed case too, is that these officers don't seem to draft their reports contemporaneous. This is over a month later. This is dated March 9th. It's Sergeant John Fanning. You guys remember Fanning? Do you remember Fanning? It was recently announced that Fanning, Buchanan, and Tully were all under internal affairs investigations. Internal affairs investigation by MSP. And then very, very quickly, they recanted and they said, oh, Fanning's not. We're done with Fanning. He's fine. Fanning is heavily involved in the Sandra Birchmore investigation. I want to know why all of a sudden they announced that Fanning is no longer under internal affairs investigation. But I have questions. The interview of Matthew Farwell, despite all the evidence collected at the scene, and when I say scene, I mean the scene of the actual killing / suicide, Sandra Birchmore's apartment. Her body was not discovered until 3 days later. Despite all the evidence that they found that day, including information that she was pregnant, information, video surveillance showing Farwell coming into the lobby that day, February 1st, knowing that that was the last day that Sandra Birchmore was seen alive. They interview Matthew Farwell on February 6th, 2021. This is 2 days after they find her body. Body was found on the 4th. February 1st was a Monday. That was the day she was murdered. That means February 6th would have been a Thursday. February 4th would have been a Thursday when they found her. And on the 6th, which is a Saturday, at approximately 3:10 p.m., Trooper Matt Dunn and Fanning interviewed Matt Farwell at the Gibbons School in Stoughton in a parking lot out front. In a parking lot. This is a suspect in a murder case, but they've already decided it's a suicide. This is the guy who they've already spoken to witnesses, because we're going to look at the witness statements that they took by phone, who's alleged to be the father of her unborn child. He's married. He's a police officer in Stoughton. He's been grooming her since she's 15. He met her when she was 12 as part of the Explorers program at Stoughton PD. They don't bring him down to the station. They don't bring him down. Goodbye, Ed. Ed, if you want to ever talk about this with me, I would love to get your thoughts on this. Interviewing this murder suspect, potential suspect, in a parking lot of a school on a Saturday. And his statement that they take from him, this report, is about 2.5 pages long, which is shorter than most of the witness statements that they take over the phone, which I find interesting as well. No recorded interviews by Canton PD or MSP. Good. Ed, we'll talk later. Enjoy your day off. If you're off today, you're always working, so you're never off. So they interview Matt Farwell, John Fanning, and Trooper Dunn. Trooper Dunn also was involved in the Karen Reed case, but he did not have as big a role in the Karen Reed case. Every single interview that's done here is done by Dunn. So I'm going to take it that he's the lead on this case, right? And this is February. So what are they sitting in a car in a parking lot outside of an outside of a school? It goes on to say on February 4th, 2021, Trooper Dunn responded to Canton for the suicide death of Sandra Birchmore. So right away, suicide death, right away. 2 days later, they're already in their statements calling it a suicide death. Trooper Dunn was advised by multiple sources that the victim, Sandra, was possibly pregnant and that she said the father of the baby is Detective Matt Farwell from Stoughton Police Department. This interview was conducted in furtherance of this investigation. So they're telling you they already have the information that Sandra Birchmore was pregnant. The father of possibly pregnant. The father was this guy that they're now choosing to interview in a parking lot in a car, who happens to be a fellow police officer of a neighboring town. And yet they're still calling it a suicide in their report. Is it incompetence? Is it corruption? Is it cover up? Is it all of the above? What is it? Oh, thank you, Stephanie, for your 20. I appreciate you. Says thank you for all you do, especially your sensitivity. I'm trying, but I'm so outraged. So they knew all of this before they go to interview him. Paragraph 2, Matt said that he heard Sandra pass away on Friday. On Friday? So this is a Saturday. Is he saying he just heard that she passed away yesterday? Because the police found her body on the Thursday. So he's saying Friday, yesterday. He just heard. Matt said that he has known Sandra for about 10 years, going back to when Sandra was a police explorer in Stoughton and Matt was an instructor. The Police Explorer program is a junior academy program for high school aged kids, exposing them to different facets of law enforcement. Matt said that Sandra had a troubled life and he felt bad for her. He would keep tabs on her over the years. Matt said that Sandra continued to have problems over the years that he has known her. Okay. So right away in the initial interview, they're walking into this, Fanning and Dunn, knowing she may be pregnant, knowing he may be the father. He starts lying to them right away, and they're not picking up what he's laying down. They're not even a suspicion is raised. He admits to them that he's known her for at least 10 years. She's 23 on the day of her death. So that goes back to when she was at least 13. And they already coming in there knowing that she's pregnant with his baby potentially, and it's not raising any red flags for them because they're interviewing him in a parking lot. You should be horrified. I'm horrified. Paragraph, and then there's a bunch of stuff that's redacted here. Matt said that sometime early in 2020, he began a sexual relationship with Sandra. He said that he was intoxicated one night and ended up meeting up with her and having sex. Matt said that he maybe had sex with her 2 to 3 times since last year. He said that the last time they had sex was the end of October of 2020. Matt said that sometime in December of 2020, Sandra told him that she was pregnant and he was the father. Now you've got an admission by this witness, police officer, fellow brother in blue, that Sandra told him he was the father of her baby. Matt said that he was confident the last time he had sex with her and that the timeline didn't add up based on her expected due date in September. Matt was adamant that he is not the father of the unborn child that Sandra was carrying at the time of her death. He's adamant. Okay. Case closed. He's adamant. We're just going to believe him. 4. Matt said that on the evening of Monday, February 1st, 2021, he went to Sandra's apartment in Canton. He's admitting to being the scene of the suicide. He said that he asked her if he could come by, and she said no problem. Matt said that he intended on breaking everything off with Sandra. Matt said that he told Sandra that she was crazy and it was not his child. He said that Sandra told him that he was a dick. Matt said that he was straightforward in his conversation with her and told her that it was all over and he was blocking her from all forms of communication. Matt said that it was a pretty nasty argument, but they weren't too loud. Matt said he kept telling Sandra that there's no way that he is the father based on her timeline. Matt said that he kept calm and was trying not to incite a fight. Matt said that Sandra was upset, but she did not make any suicidal statements at all. Matt said that he left and Sandra was standing in the kitchen when he walked out. Matt said that he arrived around 9:10 p.m. and left around 9:30 p.m. Matt is observed by video surveillance entering and leaving Sandra's building. The approximate time was 28 minutes. So when they do this interview with him, they've already got the receipts. They've already got the video of him coming in and out of the building. Matt said that when he left, he blocked Sandra on all communication platforms. 5, Matt said, and you notice how they're calling him Matt. They're not calling him Farwell. They're calling him Matt, which is a nickname that only friends use, right? So right away in paragraph 1, Trooper Matt Dunn and I interviewed Matt Farwell. Very familiar, right? At least they didn't say after formal introductions. Matt said the last time he had seen Sandra prior to Monday, February 1st, was approximately a week before. He said that he had been trying to distance himself from her. Matt said that Sandra was having sex with other people during their entire time together. Matt did not know that Sandra was telling other people that he was the father of her unborn child. Matt said that he had been to her Canton apartment 5 to 6 times and he helped her move in. Matt said that he had never had sex with her in the Canton apartment. Matt said that prior to the Canton apartment, Sandra was living at her grandmother's house on Holbrook Avenue in Stoughton. XOXO, Sergeant John Fanning. And this, my friends, is the only statement from Matt Farwell that the MSP took. It is 5 paragraphs long, and it's about not even 2 full pages when you put all these paragraphs together. Matt said. Even after they found Sandra's journals, all of the text messages going back a year on her computer, and he was found out that he was lying in this interview, what did they do? Well, here's what they did. I'm going to tell you. This interview was on Saturday, February 6th, in a parking lot of a school. And then on 3 days later, on the 9th, Farwell consents to have his phone searched on February 9th of 2021. And again, this is drafted by John Fanning. On February 9th of 2021 at approximately 12 p.m., I met with Matthew Farwell at the Norfolk District Attorney's Office in Canton, or Canton, depending on where you're from. But again, this is not even typed up until over a month later, March 11th, 2021. Now he's calling him Matthew instead of Matt. I asked for Matthew's consent to retrieve the data of his phone, to retrieve the data off his phone relative to the investigation into the death of Sandra Birchmore. Matthew read and signed the consent form. I took his phone into possession and had Trooper Nick Guarino extract the data. I then gave the phone back to Matthew. I've attached the signed consent form. So on February 9th, which was a Tuesday at noon, they let Farwell just come in 3 days later, hand over his phone. Guarino extracts the data from the phone, and then they give him his phone right back to him. They had him sign this consent form that he has a right to refuse to allow a search of his computer and or storage media without a search warrant. I understand this right, and I hereby waive the necessity of a search warrant and do authorize law enforcement to search my computer and or storage media and or computer and or storage media of my minor child, which is described as iPhone 11. Then it says, I understand that said items may be searched or examined to include creating a forensic image and or copy of all data contained within said items without obtaining a search warrant. And I do authorize the Massachusetts State Police to take possession of any material that is connected in any way with the investigation they are conducting or with any future investigation. And then he initials it and writes in there, or somebody writes in there, related to the death of Sandra Birchmore, suicide. I understand, and it has been explained to me that any materials taken will or may be examined at a state police facility, and that the results of that examination may be given to officials associated with the current or future criminal investigation and to the Norfolk District Attorney's Office. He initials that as well. Then they take his password and they redacted that part. Farwell signs off on it. And Fanning signs off on it. 12:05. They met him at 12. By 12:05, he's signing a consent form. Okay. Now, they got his phone. Guarino gets the extraction. And then what happens? They get a copy. They get his work phone as well. Because he's allowed to, after the internal affairs investigation, which Stoughton, I think they suspended him like pretty much right away. So let me see, number 59, where they get his work phone. So while they extract his phone all the way back on February 9th, I guess they don't even really analyze it until, let's see what this report says. Again, written by Fanning, April 26th of 2021. So that's 2.5 months later. Deputy Chief Brian Holmes from Stoughton Police Department brought a black iPhone to the Norfolk DA's office as part of our investigation into the death of Sandra Birchmore. The phone was issued to Detective Matthew Farwell and had been retrieved by Stoughton Police when he was placed on administrative leave. The phone has been logged into evidence. XOXO, John Fanning. So Deputy Chief Brian Holmes is the one who conducts the internal affairs investigation, which we'll look at also. And then here in August, this was what, April? 4 months after that, Fanning writes another report regarding Matthew Farwell's personal and work cell phone analysis. Paragraph 1, on February 9th, 2021, Matthew Farwell consented to a data extraction of his personal iPhone 11, which was then extracted by Trooper Nick Guarino. On April 26th of 2021, I received Matthew's work cell phone from Stoughton Police Department. Through Matthew's attorney, consent was given for a data extraction, which was performed by Trooper Nick Guarino. I analyzed both of these phones and did not find any communication with Sandra Birchmore. Matt had said in a previous interview that he deleted all communications with Sandra. XOXO, Sergeant John Fanning. So it's Fanning who analyzed both of those phones. Did he analyze the phone? He says, I analyzed these phones. Doesn't say I analyzed the data. I analyzed the phones. Guarino did the extraction. Fanning is the one who is analyzing the data. And he said he didn't find any communication with Sandra Birchmore. Yes, Gossip Girl, that's where I got it from. You get that. You get me, Ashley Oaks. You get me. Gossip Girl was the best. XOXO. Gossip Girl, that's exactly where it comes from. Case closed. They found no communication with Sandra Birchmore on either of his phones, according to Fanning. And therefore, what? There's more. There's always more. Oh, yeah, right. This was the analysis. Okay. So he consents to his phone on February 9th. By March 10th, he's lawyered up. Farwell is lawyered up by March 10th. But this report's not rendered until April 26th, 2021. So, go figure. I mean, they have some delay, don't they? In rendering their reports. And again, this is from Sergeant John Fanning. Subject, letter from attorney Patrick Hanley regarding the Sandra Birchmore death investigation. Well, at least they're not calling it a suicide investigation. It's a death investigation. Did they change their mind? I don't know. On March 10th of 2021, I received a letter at the Norfolk County DA's office from attorney Patrick Hanley. Attorney Hanley is known to me, and he represents Detective Matthew Farwell from Stoughton Police. Attorney Hanley had called me earlier in the week to tell me that he was sending a letter on behalf of Matthew in regard to some unanswered questions regarding the relationship and in response to some requests that I had made. I read the letter and it is attached to this report. Thanks, BJM. It's hard to keep it in, and sometimes it's hard to keep the snark in. And here's the letter. Name of the firm is Butters Brazilian LLP. And it is directed to Sergeant John Fanning, dated March 8th of 2021. So this is a little over 1 month post Sandra Birchmore's murder. R.E. Sandra Birchmore's death investigation. Dear Sergeant Fanning, I am writing to follow up on your recent conversations and prior interviews you have had with my client, Matthew Farwell. As you know, Mr. Farwell has been cooperative with you in your investigation, including participating in an interview with you and permitting you to download certain information from his mobile phone. Throughout your conversations with my client and later with myself, you have indicated that you view him as a witness in your investigation. This is consistent with reality. Mr. Farwell has committed no crime. Like many, he is saddened by Ms. Birchmore's death. This did not age well, did it? Attorney Hanley. I think his name's Hanley. We're going to see through some other text messages that he was not saddened by her death at all. He made jokes about it. During our recent conversations, you asked Mr. Farwell to submit a DNA sample and participate in a polygraph interview. Although I appreciate your diligence, I advised my client to decline these requests and the request for further interview, traditional non-polygraph that accompanied them. I did so because they are outside the norm. I did so because they are far outside the norm for mere witnesses in an investigation. I was a prosecutor for 14 years and participated in hundreds of interviews with state police detectives like yourself. I cannot recall once seeking a polygraph interview, and I can only recall seeking DNA of persons that the investigators and I considered targets. There are good reasons for anyone to chafe at a request for DNA and polygraph, and for an attorney to advise his client to decline the request. Compiling Mr. Farwell's DNA profile would be highly invasive. It would yield genetic markers and highly personal health and family information. Based on the information he has already provided to you that I will not restate here, I expect his DNA profile would reveal nothing of value to your case. I don't know, like maybe whether he was like the father of the unborn child of Sandra Birchmore. Mr. Farwell has already provided highly personal information. In my opinion, providing DNA is a step too far. A polygraph raises similar concerns about invasion of privacy. The topics of questioning would be highly invasive. Furthermore, the results of a polygraph are inadmissible in court because courts have concluded that polygraph results are unreliable. See Commonwealth v. Mendez. Under the circumstances herein, there is no reason for the state police to conduct a polygraph examination of my client. I don't know. How about the fact that you can now prove that he lied to you in his interview based on the text that you found on Sandra Birchmore's laptop? I write not only to explain my response to your request for DNA and polygraph of my client, but also to briefly address 2 points that may be underlying your requests. First, my client had no role in Ms. Birchmore's death. He certainly never encouraged her to take her life, nor did he have any reason to fear that she would take her own life. He was shocked and saddened when he learned that she had taken her own life. And there's an entirely redacted paragraph. If possible, please inform me when your investigation closes and any conclusions, if any, that you draw with respect to Mr. Farwell. Please contact me if I may provide additional assistance to you, or if you would like to contact my client. XOXO, Patrick Hanley. He didn't even sign it personally. He had his secretary sign it because she just put her initials, or she circled her initials, and that's what that means when you see a signature with initials underneath it, is that Patrick Hanley did not actually sign that letter himself. And as far as all of these documents that I have, and there's 81 pages of them, I don't see any other interviews of Farwell. So if the MSP did do any interviews of Farwell, they are not contained within. Let's go to questions for a moment. Thank you, Dina Do 420, for being a member for a month, who's thanking me. Thank you for watching. Jenny Grace, thanks for the 10. Holly Johnson, do you believe this arrest by the FBI has the McAlberts shaking in their boots, thinking they may be next? Well, I can't put myself in their position, but we watched the press conference together, and he said some things that would make me, if I was in their position, I certainly might be nervous, because this murder occurred 1 year almost to the day of Officer John O'Keefe's murder. And they just made an arrest in this case last week. So what do you think? Thanks, Holly. And thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, Lori Life 360 for the win, for gifting 5 memberships. Always so very kind and generous to the channel. Thank you, Lori, so much. Duncan, Idaho, thanks for the 5. Complete audit of all Massachusetts police. Let's go. You guys live there. You guys got to fight for it. You guys got to keep talking. Keep talking. Helen the Scottish Llama, thanks for the 5. Is there widespread and multiple episodes of malfeasance in a public office in the town police or MSP? Certainly seems like that. Thank you, Melanie. Can't speak to that because I don't live there and I don't have enough information, but it seems like both of these cases, Sandra Birchmore and the murder of Officer John O'Keefe, involve other police officers, right? Is it a matter of looking the other way when a fellow brother in blue is involved, doing a half-assed investigation? Or are they just really incompetent? It's for you guys to decide. Mrs. Bucket, thank you for your super sticker. Hi, Shy Gal. Thanks for the 5. If, for example, Proctor was indicted in this case for cover-up, do you think that would be enough for the state to drop the charges on Reed? They can drop the charges anytime they want. Anytime they want. Just like the feds can indict anybody else anytime they want. Right? A lot of things could happen. But for me to speculate, would be an exercise in futility. My crystal ball is broken, but hope that answers your question, because they could drop the charges at any time. The DA's office could at any time say, oh, you know what, this whole thing with the jurors and whatnot, yeah, maybe they did acquit. We'll drop the murder charge. We'll drop count 1. We'll drop count 3, and we'll just go ahead with the manslaughter charges because, hey, in the meantime, since all of this happened with the jurors coming out, Judge Cannoni denying that motion, the O'Keefe family has filed a wrongful death suit against Karen Reed, which only alleges negligence against Karen Reed, not intentional killing. So there's that. There are those pleadings which can be waved around the next time Paul O'Keefe takes the stand. And if his mother is asked to take the stand. But isn't it true, Paul, that you don't really believe Karen killed your brother on purpose if she killed him at all? Isn't that true? Well, no, I think she did it on purpose, because he's given interviews where he said he thinks that she did it on purpose. And he knew right away when she came back to the house. He knew right away. But isn't it true, Paul, that you filed a lawsuit against her and you don't say anywhere in this lawsuit that you believe that she intentionally murdered your brother? All you allege here is negligence. Isn't that true? It's a problem for them. Thank you, Cateris, for your super sticker 5. And Mary Ellen, thanks for the deuce. Too bad no DNA from the unborn baby. I don't think, no, they took fetal tissue. They took fetal tissue, but they never tested it as far as I know. And I don't know if they've tested it yet. Because this information from the feds that I have right now doesn't really say. And again, they go on in their motion to keep him for pretrial detention, saying that he's got a long history of using physical and sexual violence. Let's put this back up here so we can kind of breeze through the rest of it. And that there are many, many text messages that show this on 20 occasions in just the year before her death. And again, that's all they got off her laptop. And you know what? We should go to that document just so you guys know what I'm talking about. Let's take this down and put this up. This is entitled, this is again the MSP report from Sergeant John Fanning, dated August 16th of 2021, which says, 1, on February 4th of 2021, Trooper Dunn responded to Canton for the suicide death of Sandra Birchmore. Trooper Dunn was advised by multiple sources that the victim, Sandra, was possibly pregnant and that she said the father of the baby is Detective Matt Farwell from Stoughton Police Department. February 9th of 2021, Troopers Dunn, Keefe, and Fanning, responded to this address in Canton, which was where Sandra lived, to retrieve Sandra's laptop and any other relevant evidence. We retrieved Sandra's Apple laptop, and we were able to use a password to gain access to the device. The device was then turned over to Trooper Nick Guarino for data collection and preservation. Notice here how it says simply, and this, I can't believe this is not even dated until August 16th, when all of this information was collected on February 9th. It's inexcusable. It's always Fanning. That's right, Mary. It's always Fanning. So they took her laptop and any other relevant evidence. You notice, and I know a lot of you have read the federal papers, how they refer to journal entries quite a bit. Sandra's journal entries, that's how they got a lot of their information. What other relevant evidence did you collect, Fanning? Why is it not listed in this report that it took you 6 months to write? Did you collect journals? You got access to the device the same day, February 9th, right? You had her password somehow, and it was an Apple. So I'm curious about how you got her password. But paragraph 2 says, over the next several weeks, Fanning, analyzed data from Sandra's laptop. In particular, I was investigating any criminal conduct related to Sandra's death and blank. It is all blacked out. Oh, thanks, Ms. Moja Risen, Jim Morrison's wife. Yes, we played that at the beginning. I played a news clip at the very beginning of the stream of the feds arresting him. So go back and watch it later. Thanks for the deuce. Okay, so investigating, in particular, he was investigating any criminal conduct related to Sandra's death and blank, which I'm assume says any sexual relationship between Sandra and Farwell. But I don't know because it's redacted. Sandra's laptop gave me access to approximately 12 months of iMessages, social media contact, and other documents / databases. Okay. Matt and Sandra had texted thousands of times over the year, as well as communication with many other friends and family of Sandra. It was clear based on text with Matt that he and Matt, again, going back to Matt, that he and Sandra had a sexual relationship, as he told us in his previous interview. I'm going to break from this to say thousands. It was over 32,000 iMessages in the 1 year, which Massachusetts State Police was in possession of over the next several weeks following her murder. They had them all. Then there's something else that's redacted. And then it says, all of these conversations were flagged in the forensics report of her laptop. I don't have the forensics report. They were all flagged. 3, Sandra communicated with friends and family. It appeared that Sandra had a sexual relationship with other men in the months leading up to her death. There was no threats. There were no threats of harm by any of these individuals, including Matt. No threats of harm. You've read the federal documents, you know. You've seen the messages, you've read them, you will never unread them, you will never unsee them. All of the horrific messages from Farwell talking about choking Sandra, his fantasies of choking her, his instances of choking her, his, is that not a threat of harm? I wish there was a snark emoji, Casey. I don't know how we could make a snark emoji. Yep, other men, really? Yep, they put that right in there because, they're trying to deflect from the fellow brother in blue, Maddie. I'm surprised they didn't call him Maddie. The way they called John O'Keefe, JJ, in the civil lawsuit, which was cringe, in my opinion. Joseph King, Guarino ran all reports with no recovery of DE. How far is Canton from Salem? That's a great question, Matt. Mark Stewart. I'm sure that one of you guys could Google that. Scott Bolton, how did they miss this? These are the men and women we pay to protect us. Something is seriously wrong here. They didn't miss it. I'll tell you right now, Scott, they didn't miss it. Fanning says in this report, in August of 2021, thousands of messages were recovered from Sandra's laptop between Matt and Sandra. Approximately 12 months. They had everything that the feds talk about in their report, in their affidavit. The feds talk about some messages from 2019. Maybe they were able to go back a little bit farther. Maybe these were on her laptop. Because I have a Mac. Anybody who has a Mac, you know that your iMessages go back forever. It's not just a year, right? And if they had access to her laptop, they had access to her iCloud too. And all that stuff is up there forever, right? So they had it. Did they just look the other way? Karen Barlow, can the FBI charge a judge if they find any sort of crime or corruption? But judges have judicial immunity for the most part. Thanks, Karen. Teresa, thanks for the 5. The arrest, how and where they did, reflects urgency and the danger he posed. I'm curious the intel to arrest him ASAP, and with his child in the truck. His child was in that dump truck with him? I don't know. I don't know the intel on that, Teresa, but I'm curious. Thanks, Casey. We need to start with snark emoji. I know. So there it is. There's a receipt, my friends. They had all this information. People are trying to spin it like, Guarina couldn't find. They had it. And yeah, why couldn't he find the deleted messages in the phone of Farwell with his Celebrite extraction? Remember Guarino when he got on the stand during Karen Reed's trial? I had that queued up if you want to watch a little bit of his testimony from the Karen Reed trial, because boy, was he a smarmy little guy, the way he laughed throughout his testimony. Easy 1, 2, 3. They're so smug. There's definitely more townwide. Phoebe says, yes, his kid was there when they arrested him. That's interesting. I did not know that. You guys are telling me. You guys are giving me the deets. Heather says, Rhino has been getting all the heat, but this proves it was Fanning who analyzed and ignored it. Wow, just wow. Fanning is the guy who got all these reports. And then there was a clip that somebody sent me the other day after the arrest of after the arrest of Farwell, one can dream. Tully and Fanning were there. They were like walking outside the courthouse or something. I think it was at the courthouse. They were at the courthouse. They had like matching shoes on. It was really weird. What are they doing there? Josephine says, you notice the governor nor the AG have made no public statements about this outrageous behavior in the very agencies they are directly responsible for. No comment, indeed. Yeah, Freudian slip, exactly. The matching shoes guys, right. William is physically sick of what happened to this innocent young lady. And it gets worse. Oh, he's not released. No, they're holding him. They are holding him, Debbie. They're holding him until his retention hearing, which is going to be September 12th. So this motion where all of this detail is coming from is the motion to detain him. I don't think they're going to let him out on bail. He's a flight risk, and they're setting all of this forth, why they think that he should not be released. He's a flight risk. He tried to conceal evidence. He staged her death to make it look like a suicide. So we just looked at what Fanning had access to, right? At least 1 year of iMessages. Well, guess what was contained within that 1 year of iMessages? These messages, and they're a little bit graphic, so I'm just going to try and dance around it a little bit. But there are messages from 3 months prior to her murder, because they had these, as you know, he had at least 12 months. Text messages show the defendant physically abused Birchmore on at least 20 occasions in just the year before her death. So this is the feds talking now. Just the year before her death, which is just exactly what Fanning told us that he had access to, that he analyzed. Farwell sent Birchmore at least 20 occasions of text messages stating that he would grab her throat, pin her down by the throat, squeeze her throat, or choke her during intimate activity. For example, less than 4 months before her death, and then it's gonna go on until just disgusting this. I'm gonna grab you by the throat, and it's like this whole forcible fantasy. Maybe I'll hold you down your throat while I blank you. He then reflected on how tight he would squeeze, texting that he wanted her to feel like, OMG, this is really happening and I can't stop it. And then again, all of this is confirmed by Birchmore's disclosures to her friends that the defendant assaulted her in the weeks before her death. They had all of this information too. Then they talk about text messages between Farwell and Birchmore's own journal entries. So I'm curious about this journal. Is the journal one of the other pieces of evidence that they found that they didn't specifically name? They're saying that this violent sexual punishment started as early as 2013 and continued until 2020. So all of this evidence goes to his violence, his acts of violence that he not only perpetrated upon her, but that he fantasized about going back to when she was a minor. All kinds of role play that he wanted her to do with him. All kinds of memes, disgusting memes that they found on Farwell's iCloud. So that must be one thing that the feds looked at that MSP didn't see fit to find, or didn't dig deep enough to find, or just couldn't find because maybe they were looking the other way. His iCloud account, which gave the feds images that confirm his interest in DV and SV, including strangulation, going on and on and on. Memes, proof that he had sexual interest in children. Because of all of these horrific, disgusting things, the United States of America is arguing that Farwell should not be released because he's a danger to the community by clear and convincing evidence. And this is interesting too. They cited the United States versus Gotti. Those of you from New York know all about John Gotti. It was a 1986 case. Organized crime figure. That they should detain him because he's a flight risk. He's violent. He's a danger to the community. Danger to children. He remains a risk to obstruction. And they say for the last 3 years, Farwell may have believed that he had gotten away with killing Sandra Birchmore. Now that he's been charged, some of the evidence has been revealed. Circumstances have changed. He now knows that if convicted, he faces a mandatory life sentence. These new circumstances provide a great incentive for him to further obstruct justice. And they argue that he killed her when he was fearful that Birchmore might reveal information about his commission or possible commission of federal crimes. He's a flight risk. Keep him in jail, please. XOXO Josh Levy, who is the acting U.S. attorney for the state of Massachusetts, and of whom you should be very, very proud to call your acting U.S. attorney, because he is not going to look the other way. He absolutely is not going to look the other way. Horrific. Going back to the affidavit of the special agent. Whose affidavit was attached to this motion to keep him in jail. We're going to take a look at what their expert found with regard to the cause of death, despite what the medical examiner said. Thank you, Karan Mayo. I am watching a bit behind, but wanted to thank you. Been waiting for you to talk about this poor girl. Your insight and viewpoint is what keeps me coming back to your channel. Thank you. Thank you so much. This is my third video on Sandra Birchmore. You can check out the playlist. And the first episode that I did was really interesting because it goes through all of the Canton PD reports. They were first on scene. MSP was next on scene, very similar to the Karen Reed case. Thank you, Raven. Make sure you all like and sub. Thank you. It helps the YouTube algorithm if you guys wouldn't mind doing that for me. Otherwise, I may turn off the air conditioning. Make you look at the fan. Let's all take a moment, shall we, to hit the like button. We've got 3,100 people watching, which is great for a holiday. And a Monday afternoon when it is kind of a beautiful day here in New York and the humidity has finally lifted. And we have 20, how many do we have? 3,100 watching. Wait, could this even be right? And only 983 likes? That can't be right. Guys, we got to get that number up. We got to get it up. I'll give you a second to do that. You might have to close out the chat if you're on your phone. Thank you. I appreciate you guys so much. Duncan, Idaho, thanks for the 10. He made and groomed her into his thing since she was a child, but when his thing started to leave his control, it wasn't just a consequence-free fantasy for him anymore, and he had to get rid of her. That's what it sure seems like, right? And I mean, based on what we just read from MSP, don't you think that seemed pretty obvious? I mean, I know hindsight's 20/20 and all, but based on the fact that they had access to all of these messages between the two of them, what is the reason that this was ruled a suicide and charges were never pressed against Matthew Farwell? They had all the information from day one. Some guy with cancer, thank you. Stevie Wonder has better eyesight than the MSP. Ain't that the truth? P. Lola's mom, what has he been up to the last 3 years? New victim? As I said, statistics show that the average pedo has already assaulted 100 times before they're caught. If there are any other victims out there, going all the way back to the Explorer program, 10, 12 years, because you're going to see that not only was Matt Farwell having relations with Sandra Birchmore, but so was his twin brother, William. And so was perhaps Robert Devine, who was in charge of that whole program of police explorers. And maybe there's other victims out there, and maybe they will come forward because they should not be allowed to get away with this. This is horrific. And when I handled those cases against the Catholic Church, they were also horrific. And I had something like 15 clients who were men who were abused by the same priest who had been shuffled among 7 different parishes. And I think however many I had, 15, maybe more victims over, I don't know what it is, a 15-year period, because they just kept passing them around to different parishes without warning anyone. And had they done something about the first report, the next 14 boys never would have been abused by this disgusting pedo priest. Hi, Mama She. Thank you so much. Hi, Cupcake fam, listening while doing chores. Thanks for the 20. I'm glad that we can keep you company and entertained while you're doing chores, but this will make you clean in rage, because this is rage-inducing. Let's take a look at It's a 45-page affidavit. Obviously, we're not going to read the whole thing. But I want you to see that in this case, just like in the Karen Reed case, the feds hired their own expert because they didn't like what the medical examiner had to say. And who knows, the medical examiner in the Sandra Birchmore case was strong-armed into changing or making sure that the manner of death was listed as suicide, because we know that Michael Proctor and his buddies at the Massachusetts State Police had a history of doing that. And this happened a year before the murder of Officer John O'Keefe. So this affidavit was filed in support of the motion to detain Farwell. And as I said, he is being detained until at least the detention hearing on September 12th. And this is gruesome and it has too much detail, so we're not going to go through all of the sordid details. We've spoken about them a little bit. Thanks, Pilgrim Shadow, for the 10. 2 of William Farwell's attorneys withdrew from his civil suit on the day of Matthew's arrest. The judge said, son, it's going to cost you some time. In fact, it's going to cost you your life. Wow. Thanks, Pilgrim Shadow, for coming in with the 10 and the intel on that. We went over the civil suit in the first stream on Birchmore that I did. If you're interested in that, go back and take a look. That also has all of the Canton police reports that we looked at together. So this special agent signed a 45-page affidavit in support of the motion to keep Farwell detained, and goes through his or her background with the FBI, Quantico graduate, all the things that were reviewed, all the things that we went through in the original motion papers. And in case you weren't with me on the first stream that I did with regard to Canton PD, here's the history with regard to Canton PD. On February 4th of 2021, 3 days after the murder, members of the Canton Police Department went to Birchmore's apartment to conduct a well-being check. When police officers entered Birchmore's apartment, they found her body. A paramedic determined that Birchmore was dead, and her body was transported to the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, or OCME. In early May of 2021, an OCME pathologist ruled Birchmore's manner of death to be a suicide. Okay, this is 3 months post-killing. The medical examiner had already ruled the manner of death to be suicide. If you don't know about manners of death, there are 5 choices for the manner of death that can be listed on a death certificate. And they are, I can remember them right now: homicide, suicide, accidental, natural, or undetermined. You may recall that in the death of Officer John O'Keefe, the medical examiner listed undetermined as the manner of death on his death certificate, despite the fact that Proctor, in his text messages to Fanning and others, said that he and Buchanan tried to get the medical examiner to change it to homicide and called the medical examiner a whack job. Although when he was on the stand, he tried to make you and me and the jury believe and gaslight us into believing that he really meant Karen Reed was a whack job, not the medical examiner. But we know exactly what he meant. So not only did the medical examiner rule it a suicide, but you will see, if you go back to that prior stream, that in the first 3 hours, I think it was within 3 hours, Canton PD had ruled this a suicide, which is far less time than it took Michael Proctor, because Michael Proctor took an entire 16 hours to determine that Officer John O'Keefe was intentionally killed by Karen Reed with her car. But in this case of Sandra Birchmore, it only took them 3 hours to determine that it was a suicide. So I guess it's a race. Then they go on to talk about how things that we went over, about how Farwell's exploitation of Birchmore started when she was 15 years old, and they've got the receipts to back that up. And they've got text messages between them. And they talk about the age of consent being 16 in Massachusetts, and anything under 16 is statutory rape. And that is borne out by the text messages between them talking about her first time with him. And then here's something interesting. Paragraph 16, data from Birchmore's Facebook account reveals aspects of the beginning of Farwell and Birchmore's online communications. Well, we know because we looked at the Massachusetts State Police report by Fanning that they had all of her socials going back at least a year. And Facebook, you know, Facebook, if you go onto somebody's Facebook, you can see everything all the way to the beginning. They don't mention that in any of their reports, though, do they? But they had it. They had access to it. Farwell sent Birchmore a Facebook friend request on October 28th of 2012. At the time, Birchmore was 15. Farwell was her 26-year-old instructor. Did they just look the other way? Did they not dive deep enough? Are they just incompetent? Because all of this information was within their possession. We just read about it. Yes, Sandra's family hired an expert, not her family, but the plaintiff's attorney. So they have a civil lawyer for the civil suit for wrongful death. The attorney for the civil suit, in that case, hired Dr. Michael Bodden, who is a very well-renowned expert witness in the field of, he's a medical examiner, autopsies, cause of death. He was also hired in the Shannon Gilbert case here on Long Island for one of the potential Long Island serial killer victims. I think he was even hired in OJ. Bodden shares the opinion that this was a killing and a homicide and not a suicide. But we're going to take a look at the FBI expert because they hired an expert too. But yes, that was in the news recently. Don Canine. Incompetence gets blamed for everything. You'd have to be a fool to believe that our government is just incompetent. These people are intentionally screwing up. Look the other way. Look the other way. They reminisced about things in these messages on Facebook, all of which the MSP had access to. In addition to messages with her friends. So I don't make anybody dizzy, I'm just going to take this down and scroll through it so I can find it without making you dizzy for a second here. Then they've got an entire chart of times and dates when Farwell was on duty and actually hanging out with Sandra Birchmore, because that's another charge here, is that he was getting paid. And during his on time with the PD, he was with Sandra Birchmore. They've got an entire list going all the way back to April of 2020, which again, MSP had access to because they said they got stuff going back at least a year. He says things like, I'm going to sneak away from work quick. I'm coming over now. I'm going to be on the clock, but I'm coming to see you. All that kind of stuff. And then there's text messages between various people and Sandra Birchmore, things that he told her. But first, let's go to the medical examiner, then we can go back to that stuff. Hold on. All right, Dr. Smock. And this is on page 31 of 45 of the affidavit. They talk about how they found lots of evidence that Sandra was planning for the future, and all of these things are inconsistent with someone who is going to take their own life. Okay, so we're going to take it back to Canton police officers who discover the body. On February 4th of 2021, Canton police officers conducted a well-being check at Birchmore's apartment. One of Birchmore's co-workers called the police because Birchmore had failed to show up for work that day. When officers arrived, they found Birchmore's body seated on the floor in a reclined position with a duffel bag strap tied around her neck. That strap was connected to her closet doorknob, the closet that Farwell had inspected approximately 1 week earlier. At least one first responder quickly concluded that Birchmore had been deceased for days. So they also found some text messages between Sandra and a friend where Sandra was telling the friend, yeah, he's being really weird. I gave him a key to my apartment and all of a sudden he's like looking in my closets and he's looking around and it's really odd. Those messages were close in time to the murder and therefore the feds found them and, put 2 and 2 together pretty easily. This is also interesting. Again, it's a duffel bag strap. If you go back to the original Canton PD reports, they talk about a scarf. It's a big difference between a scarf and a strap. So I have issues with that as well. The original Canton PD reports. I reviewed crime scene photographs that depict Birchmore wearing the same clothing that she was wearing when she is seen on video entering her apartment on February 1st, 2021 at approximately 5:33 p.m. This is consistent with Birchmore having died later that same evening. According to police reports, when Birchmore's body was found, her cell phone was on the floor, located approximately 12 inches from her right hand and 6 inches from her bent right knee. Then they also talk about in the footnote a report regarding, which we talked about, we read earlier, Farwell's admission to MSP that he went to her apartment and was there between 9:10 and 9:30, and the video shows him in her apartment. I have reviewed the data on Birchmore's phone. A log report indicates that the phone was locked from 9:13 p.m. on February 1st until the device powered off because of battery loss on February 3rd of 2021. On February 1st of 2021, while still locked, Birchmore's phone recorded a screenshot of a black screen at 9:18 p.m. In other words, after sending a final text message to Farwell to tell him the door was unlocked, Birchmore's phone locked and was not unlocked until after the device was recovered by police. Health data on Birchmore's phone indicates that the last movement recorded by the phone on February 1st, 2021 occurred at 9:40 p.m. That was 3 minutes before Farwell was captured on surveillance video leaving Birchmore's apartment. Specifically, this data indicates that the mechanism that Apple uses to record movement registered 8 steps at approximately 9:40 p.m. Remember what Trooper Guarino testified in Karen Reed's case about how that information's not accurate and that John O'Keefe really didn't go up 3 flights of stairs after he got out of her car? Because, that can happen when you're just going over a hill or waving your phone around. Yeah, that's Guarino. He's on this case too. These recorded steps occurred while Farwell was still in Birchmore's apartment. The phone recorded no additional steps between 9:40 p.m. and the time it was recovered by first responders on February 4th of 2021. As noted above, first responders ultimately found the phone next to Birchmore's body. Based on my review of the frequency of Birchmore's phone use over weeks, months, and years leading up to her death, her failure to access her phone is inconsistent with her usual habits when alive and awake. And that footnote says, I have also interviewed multiple witnesses who have reported on Birchmore's frequent, almost incessant phone use. In fact, one witness referred to Birchmore's phone as her third hand. He then reviewed her phone from the hours leading up to her death. And he says, this is evidence that appears to be inconsistent with Birchmore, a pregnant woman, choosing to die by suicide that day. At 1:25 p.m. to 1:31 p.m., Birchmore communicated with a photographer regarding the timeline for booking a newborn photography shoot. 7:57 p.m., she texted a friend to obtain baby clothes from her. 8:25 p.m., Birchmore performed a Google search for Cubby Kids furniture. This is interesting. Paragraph 78 talks about the condition of and items found in Birchmore's apartment were inconsistent with Birchmore dying by suicide. Paragraph 78, I have interviewed family members who helped clean Birchmore's apartment in the days following her death. Some of the things they observed were also inconsistent with Birchmore deciding to die by suicide. For example, during their first visit, they noted that Birchmore had been in the middle of doing laundry when she died, with a load of wet clothes in the washing machine and another load in the dryer. Additionally, they observed a homemade sign saying, "Congratulations, you're going to be a father." That sign had an ultrasound photo on it and was sprinkled with glitter. Why is the family finding all of this stuff when they're cleaning out their dead nieces and cousins' apartment? Why is none of this listed in the Massachusetts State Police reports? Any idea? '79. Additionally, in Birchmore's apartment, family members observed a new baby stroller that was still in its package. They also observed homemade and store-bought onesies for a baby. One onesie read, "We're going to be parents," with a set of footprints underneath. Birchmore had packages that had been delivered recently, including clothing and other supplies for her baby. Some of that stuff actually was in the Canton PD reports, I believe, the packages and the stroller. Finally, paragraph 80. Finally, family members found a necklace that belonged to Birchmore lying on the floor of her bedroom. This necklace consisted of a thin gold chain with a pink flamingo charm. Family members observed that the necklace's chain was broken, but not at the clasp. There was also a large clump of hair on the chain. From my review of the crime scene photos, I observed that while the strap was still around Birchmore's neck, the necklace was broken and hanging from the left side of her neck. The necklace's charm was on the right side of her abdomen. Why did the family find this necklace? Why was this not collected by the CERT team or CSI or whoever came in there? Why is this necklace that's in the crime scene photo still lying on the floor days later when her relatives are going to clean up her apartment? Right. So the cops found none of that, MD? No. Nope. We have nope emojis for members. This is a perfect time for the nope emoji. Her relatives found it. Her family found the necklace. And then it says in the footnote that she used to wear this necklace all the time. There's photos of her wearing the necklace. I mean, a shoddy investigation for, a girl like her is one thing, because it looks like a suicide, but, a shoddy investigation in the death of a fellow Boston police officer is quite something else, I guess, right? Unless you're looking the other way because there's another police officer potentially involved in that one. I don't know. I don't think they recorded the interview they didn't record any of these interviews, Julie, I don't think. None of them were recorded. Also, it says Bertram was trying so hard to ride happy through her life in spite of being taken advantage of. Yep. Yep. Thank you, Wendy, for becoming a new member. Welcome. And here we go into the expert that the FBI hired. Autopsy and medical evidence. An OCME pathologist, hereinafter the medical examiner, performed an autopsy on Birchmore's body. The ME determined that Birchmore's cause of death was asphyxia by hanging. That also means strangulation. The medical examiner ruled Birchmore's manner of death a suicide. The medical examiner's written autopsy report noted that Birchmore's hyoid bone, which is a U-shaped bone at the front of the neck, was fractured on the right side and that she suffered from petechial hemorrhage of the bulbar and palpebral conjunctivae. That's in your eyes. That's when the blood vessels burst in your eyes. Additionally, the medical examiner concluded that Birchmore had a hemorrhage of her left sternothyroid muscle, which is in your neck. 82, the medical examiner's autopsy report further confirmed that Birchmore was approximately 8 to 10 weeks pregnant at the time of her death. The autopsy included toxicology testing. The results of the toxicology tests were negative for all substances except for sertraline, which was likely explained by the antidepressants Birchmore had been prescribed. I believe that is the generic form of Zoloft, I believe. 83, as part of this investigation, the government retained Dr. William Smock as an expert to independently review the crime scene photos, autopsy photos, and the medical examiner's autopsy report. Dr. Smock is an emergency medicine residency and forensic fellowship trained physician with more than 40 years of experience in the forensic evaluation of injuries, crime scenes, the forensic evaluation and reconstruction of wounds, including asphyxia-related deaths. His training experience and position as a police surgeon, instructor at the Louisville Metro Police Academy, instructor for the U.S. DOJ, professor of emergency medicine, medical director of an EMS service, physician and medical advisor to the FBI and U.S. Marshal Service, and an assistant medical examiner with the Kentucky Medical Examiners, includes the emergency treatment, investigation, and reconstruction of asphyxia-related deaths and the analysis of crime scenes for evidence of alteration. He has treated and evaluated thousands of patients, both fatally and non-fatally injured, who have experienced the physiological consequences of asphyxia, including strangulation. Dr. Smock has written, lectured extensively, and trained thousands of law enforcement officers, physicians, nurses, judges, and attorneys on evidence collection, crime scene investigation, the analysis and reconstruction of wounds, injury mechanisms, and the medical risks and consequences of asphyxia. One sec. Based on his review of the evidence, Dr. Smock has made several observations and conclusions that call into question the prior finding that Birchmore's cause of death was suicide, and instead further confirm that Birchmore's cause of death was homicide. First, Dr. Smock concluded that the fracture of the right superior horn of Birchmore's hyoid bone is not consistent with the position in which first responders found her, sitting. A sitting hanging is called an incomplete hanging, meaning only partial body weight is applied to the neck ligature. Dr. Smock's review of hundreds of cases of hangings in the forensic medical literature found no reported cases of hyoid bone fractures in seated women. Fractures of the hyoid bone are more commonly seen in strangulation assaults and in hangings with full body weight applied to the ligature, but not seated hangings. 86. Second, Dr. Smock noted that during the autopsy, a pattern imprint was documented on Birchmore's right upper chest. The pattern imprint was the consequence of a buckle or buckles from the ligature strap being forced down into Miss Birchmore's chest. The presence of this pattern imprint is not inconsistent with a ligature hanging. Rather, the presence of the pattern is consistent with blunt force trauma from an assault. When first responders found Birchmore's body, the buckle responsible for this imprint was observed just below her right ear. However, the location of the imprint on her chest is not consistent with an incomplete ligature hanging. Third, Dr. Smock reviewed the autopsy photos that depict Birchmore with areas of skin missing from the inferior and lateral aspects of her nose, consistent with abrasions. These types of injuries are commonly seen in cases of suffocation when the victim moves their nose back and forth in an effort to breathe. Fourth, Dr. Smock noted that Birchmore was in the habit of always wearing a chain necklace with a flamingo pendant. The chain was found broken around Birchmore's neck. The breaking of Birchmore's chain is consistent with a struggle. Dr. Smock, based on his education, experience, training, and his review of the materials in this case, opined with a reasonable degree of medical certainty and scientific certainty that the cause of Miss Birchmore's death is asphyxia and that the manner of death is homicide. And that, in addition to, I don't know, more than 40 other pages, is what was used to indict Matthew Farwell on these new federal charges of killing a witness. Mary Ellen, thank you for the 5. To clarify, this is a federal case. Death penalty is available even in non-death penalty states. Yep. Think Boston Marathon bombing. Yes. I will say also that for the federal death penalty, not that this is not horrific, a horrific crime. It's not used that often. And when it is, it's used in cases like that, mass terrorism type cases. So don't be surprised if the death penalty is not sought in this case, although I'm sure that many people think it should be. Thank you, Shy Gal, for gifting a membership. I appreciate you so much. Maureen, I know, I wish we would be able to watch this trial, but federal trials are not televised. Peter Grant, Super Maxim. Oh, it's like Club Fed. Federal prison is like Club Fed. Linda Mighty Mouse says, of course, they didn't investigate. They knew what he was doing with her. They were afraid of where it would point. They had the video surveillance of him going into her home before she was killed. Yep. They interviewed him in a parking lot. And that was about it. One time. They took an extraction of his phone in which Trooperino was not able to find anything of interest, despite the fact that they had her laptop with over 30,000 iMessages between Sandra and Farwell. And here's a fun thing. This is a 60-page internal affairs report conducted by the Stoughton Police Department. So we could take a quick look at that if you guys want, because they found lots of stuff, lots of shenanigans that was going on, not just between Matty Farwell and Sandra, but his twin brother, Billy. I'm going to take a look at that. Yeah, let's take a look at Billy's. Billy gave an interview to the police also. That'll be fun. We'll do that one first. Not fun. There's nothing fun about any of this. It's mind numbing. If you haven't seen these documents and you're seeing them for the first time, you should be outraged. Yeah, he passed this poor girl around. This is Brady while she was still a child to his brother and his buddies. Yep. Yep. And right now he's the only one charged, but that does not mean that won't change, because let's take a look at this. Okay. This is another report by John Fanning. Yes, thank you, Phoebe. I didn't point this out. You are correct. Sandra was 4'10". Farwell was 6'4". He looks like a giant next to her. 100% absolutely does. Yep, passed around, aka trafficked. All right, so this next report by Sergeant John Fanning is dated March 9th of 2021, but the interview of William Farwell, the twin brother of Matthew, was taken on February 11th. So again, took him like almost a month to draft this, but here we go. On February 11th, 2021, at approximately 4:05 p.m., Trooper Matt Dunn and I interviewed, meaning Fanning, interviewed William Billy, in quotes, Farwell in a parking lot at Cobb's Corner in Stoughton. What is it with the MSP doing interviews in parking lots instead of calling them down to the station to sit in an interrogation room? Let's see. It would have been a Thursday, or at least it's. On February 4th, 2021, Trooper Dunn responded to Canton for the suicide death of Sandra Birchmore. Still calling it a suicide. They've made up their mind. Confirmation bias. Look the other way. Trooper Dunn was advised by multiple sources that the victim, Sandra, was possibly pregnant, and that she said the father of the baby is Detective Matt Farwell from Stoughton Police Department. Trooper Dunn was also advised from multiple sources that the victim was having sex with Matt's brother, Billy Farwell. This interview was conducted in furtherance of this investigation. Billy said that he had heard Sandra passed away on Friday. Billy said that he first met Sandra about 10 years ago when Sandra was a police explorer in Stoughton and Billy was a guest instructor. 10 years ago would have meant that Sandra was 13. The Police Explorer program is a junior academy program for high school aged kids, exposing them to the different facets of law enforcement. Billy had said that he had not seen Sandra in a very long time, probably since the Explorers program. Billy became a Stoughton police officer in 2017. In 2018, Billy saw Sandra while he was working a paid detail in Stoughton. Billy said that Sandra remembered him, but he didn't really remember her that well. Billy said that Sandra wanted to get into the Army and asked if he had any contacts. Billy, who still serves in the military, helped her get in contact with recruiters to get into the Army. Billy said that Sandra got into the Army, but eventually got kicked out during boot camp. Billy said that Sandra started constantly contacting him. Billy said that the last time he was in contact with Sandra was about 2 weeks ago via email. So remember, 2 weeks ago from the 11th would take us back to like 3 days before her murder. Yeah. Sandra told Billy that she had been accepted to nursing school. Billy said that he had a sexual relationship with Sandra going back about 2 years. Billy said that in 2020, he had been with her sexually maybe 2 to 3 times. Then there's a whole bunch of stuff redacted. Billy said that the last time they were together was sometime in December of 2020. Sandra told Billy that she was pregnant and that the father was his brother, Matt. Billy said he knew that he didn't get her pregnant. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff redacted. So he's having sex with her during the time she's trying to get pregnant with his brother. Whole bunch of stuff redacted. XOXO, Sergeant John Fanning. Didn't raise any suspicions, any motive, any potential suspects, any reason to get a warrant for DNA. Are you kidding me? Fanning again. Remember the fan that we watched in the courtroom during the trial of Karen Reed every single day? It was only fans all the time. You think that was some kind of premonition? All the fanning that we watched during the Karen Reed trial? Right? Sick. Absolutely sick. Yep, Mr. Crowley Guarino lost incriminating information here. Oh yeah, he sure did, didn't he? In case you forgot who Trooperino is, I'm going to pull up a little bit of his testimony. Why not? We're here. Remember how smarmy he was on the stand. Right. We're going to pull this up. This is Yanetti's part of Yanetti's cross. We wound up calling him like Trooperino. Trooper Guarino. That's not it, kids. In case you forgot, let's refresh your recollection with a little fiery exchange between Yanetti Trooperino, aka Nick Guarino.
January 29th,
Objection.
22, Trooper Michael Proctor and Sergeant Yuri Buchanan of the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office responded to the unattended death of John O'Keefe at 34 Fairview Road in Canton. Those were your words, were they not?
All right, so the objection sustained, you can ask it differently.
Did Michael Proctor tell you that he had received or retrieved John O'Keefe's cell phone from 34 Fairview Road in Canton?
Objection.
I'm going to allow that.
No, I didn't know where it was retrieved from.
You didn't know where it was retrieved from?
Correct.
All right. But you did include in your report that while Proctor and Buchanan were on scene, they retrieved the cell phone of John O'Keefe, correct?
Yeah, remember when I watched this again today, I was like, holy crap, remember that? Remember Michael Morrissey's hostage video? Saying that Michael Proctor was never on at 34 Fairview on the day of the murder. Guarino's report said that Proctor retrieved John O'Keefe's cell phone from the scene at 34 Fairview, and now he's going to try and walk it back. I forgot about all of this and how mad it made me. Is it not? Can you not hear it? I have the subtitles on. It's as loud as it can go.
At some point during the day, they did. I don't know where from. So there's multiple.
Yeah, I'm asking about your report, Trooper. You know I'm questioning you about your report.
No, I understand. And I'm explaining. I don't know what scene
it's
it's from.
explain, sir, most respectfully, until Mr. Lally questions you.
Yeah.
Okay, so no comments.
See, he was laughing. Like, this is funny. Like, this is some kind of joke. Like, do I amuse you, Guarino? Is this funny to you?
No, I understand. And I'm explaining. I don't know what scene it's from.
explain, sir, most respectfully, until Mr. Lally questions you.
Objection, Your
Okay,
Honor.
so no comments. I think to speed things along, do you have your report with you?
I do, Your Honor.
I think it'll make it easier.
To speed things along, she's going to make it easier for him and let him read his report. This is so improper. There's a woman on trial for murder, and now that I remember how mad this made me when it first happened during Karen Reed's trial. There's a woman on trial for murder. And rather than let the defense attorney cross-examine this witness properly, she's going to speed it up, let him read his report. Are you kidding me? Just one of the many improper things that happened during this trial.
Miss
Can you
Giannetti.
read the first two lines? of that?
Let him grab it.
Go.
Can you read the first two lines to the jury, please?
Yep. On Saturday, January 29th, 2022, Trooper Michael Proctor and Sergeant Yuri Buchanan of the Norfolk District Attorney's Office responded to the unattended death of John O'Keefe at 34 Fairview Road in Canton. Through his investigation, was found O'Keefe was a victim of.
Yeah, they went to 34 Fairview, not according to Michael Morrissey. They didn't. Not according to Michael Proctor, who was demoted from lead investigator to like customer service rep during the course of this trial.
Of a motor vehicle homicide. While on scene, Trooper Proctor secured O'Keefe's phone and brought it to the Norfolk DA's office for forensic analysis.
Okay. So you'd agree with me that you included that clause, while on scene, they secured his phone, did you not?
I did write that.
Okay. And that was back on February 4th of 2022, correct?
Yes, it was.
Within 6 days of John O'Keefe being found mortally wounded on Albert's lawn, correct?
Yes, sir.
And at that time, you knew that the crime scene was 34 Fairview Road, correct?
No.
No.
Yet you put in your report while on scene, did you not?
Yes, I don't know what scene they recovered from. I know they went multiple places on the 29th. They didn't get back to me till 7:30 that night almost.
Oh, wow. He really is incompetent. He really is incompetent. Remember, this was a year, almost the day after Sandra Birchmore was murdered. He's had a year of more experience, maybe. And this is really funny to him. Like he put this in his report, but maybe he was wrong because now he knows. He knows Morrissey made that public statement that Proctor was never there. Now he's got to walk it back because you know what he's doing? He's looking the other way now too. This is disgusting.
When I first got the phone.
Well, you'd agree with me that the Canton Police Department wasn't the crime scene, correct?
I never said crime scene in my report. I wrote scene.
Okay. Well,
Not the
Canton
scenes.
Police Department was not the scene of any crime, was it?
I don't know. I don't believe so.
Oh, it was.
You
It
don't-
was, though, actually. It was the scene of a crime. It was the scene of the inverted Sallyport video. Mm-hmm. And it was the scene of the crime of the bashing of the taillight and pulling the pieces out and then putting them into a bag and then sprinkling them on this. So yeah, maybe he's right. He doesn't know if Canton PD is a scene of a crime. That's very telling in retrospect, isn't it now? Listen. Take it back.
And Police Department was, oh,
This is on the 29th. They didn't get back to me till 7:30 that night almost
Listen.
okay.
when I first got the
Well,
phone.
you'd agree with me that the Canton Police Department wasn't the crime scene, correct?
I never said crime scene in my report. I wrote scene.
Okay. Well, Canton Police Department was not the scene of any crime, was it?
I don't know. I don't believe so.
You don't know if the Canton Police Department was the scene of a crime. Is
I
that
don't
what
think it was.
You don't think it was?
Funny. It's funny.
Now, in that report, you were trying to establish the chain of custody of that phone, right? Because you described where it was found, where it was taken, and who had possession of it, correct?
I said it never said where it was taken. I said the phone was recovered on scene by Trooper Proctor. Again, I don't know where it was recovered from. I did find out later it was at Canton PD.
Well, hold on a second. Again, we're focusing on your report.
I know, I'm reading it.
As opposed to details you want to fill in now, okay?
Okay.
With regard to,
I know you're reading it because the judge said you could read it, which is highly improper and never done, by the way. And notice how he smiles over at the jury, and he's got to stick to his report now. But now he's going to get an opportunity to explain why his report was wrong.
you just testified that you never said where it was taken, yet previously you said it was taken to you, was it not?
No, I said recovered from,
Wait a
like
minute.
the scene location.
Did Trooper Proctor take the phone to you and
Yes.
hand it to you?
Yes, he did.
Okay, so it was taken to you, correct?
That is correct.
All right. So you described in your report where it was found because you said while on scene, correct?
Correct.
And where it was taken to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And who had possession of it, which was initially Trooper Proctor in terms of your observations, and then you, correct?
That is who brought me the phone to the DA's office. Yes.
And you would agree with me that chain of custody of a piece of evidence is an important detail in any criminal investigation, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Would you agree with me that someone reading your report or listening to it as the jury listened today would understand you to be saying that Michael Proctor seized John O'Keefe's cell phone at 34 Road in Canton?
Objection.
All right. I'd like to ask you some
course it's
questions about
sustained.
the extraction that you discussed in that same February 4th, 2022 report, the very same report. In that report, after you name the tools that you use to extract data from the phone, you indicated that a copy of that cell phone extraction was placed on a state police server, or was it a DA's office server?
DA's office server.
Okay, on a server so that it could be accessed there, correct?
That is correct.
But that extraction you placed on the server did not include all the potential data on John O'Keefe's phone, did it?
How do you mean?
Well, didn't you indicate in your report that the extraction was not inclusive of all potential data contained within the device?
No, that's not true.
Okay,
Well-
hold on, stop. Okay, so remember that the MSP works for the Norfolk County DA's office, right? They're assigned to Norfolk County DA's office. So this is interesting. He's testifying in the Karen Reed case that he uploaded the extraction of the phone, John O'Keefe's phone, to the Norfolk County DA's office server, which means they have a copy of the extraction of the phone, which means that if that is their policy and procedure, they did the same thing in Sandra Birchmore's case. And they uploaded the extraction of Farwell's phone and Sandra's laptop to the Norfolk County DA's office. So they would have the ability to look through all of those messages and things themselves. So how is it that nobody in the Norfolk County DA's office ever questioned the fact that Sandra Birchmore's death might not have been a suicide when they had access to 32,000 messages between Sandra Birchmore and a Stoughton police officer, Farwell? Did they look the other way, or are they incompetent? Is that why Morrissey was freaking out in May of 2023 when he started furiously writing his hate letters to the U.S. Attorney's Office to try and desperately find out what they were investigating? Was he worried about Birchmore?
The extraction that you did contained communications, iOS messages, phone calls, social media communications between John O'Keefe and Karen Reed, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And it contained communications between John O'Keefe and Jennifer McCabe.
Yes, that's true.
It contained communications between John O'Keefe and Kerry Roberts.
I can't recall.
All right. But it did not include any communications between John O'Keefe and Julie Albert, did it?
Again, I can't recall.
And again, I'm talking about that initial extraction. That initial one didn't include any communications between John O'Keefe and Chris Albert, did it?
I only created one extraction of John O'Keefe's phone.
That extraction report also did not include any location data, did it?
No, it did.
You didn't note any location data in that initial report, did you?
In the February 4th report?
Correct.
I didn't go through the data at that point.
All right.
This is just my extraction report saying that I got the phone, it was extracted and placed onto the server. And then I wrote, this report is not inclusive of all potential evidence, potential data contained within this evidence.
When was the first time that you reported on location data in this case?
I don't remember.
Wasn't until April of 2023, correct?
There was a reason for that.
Well, I didn't.
April of 2023. Officer John O'Keefe was murdered on January 29th of 2022, more than a year later. Hold on. Was when he pulled the location data. Because, not a rush or anything. We've only indicted a woman for murder.
Evidence.
When was the first time that you reported on location data in this case?
I don't remember.
Wasn't until April of 2023, correct?
Yeah.
There was a reason for that.
Well,
Deny till you
I
die,
didn't
Christy.
ask you if there was a reason for it, sir. You understood my question, didn't
He's
you?
laughing again.
That's correct. My first report regarding
You
was
believe this, smarty mofo? You believe this smart? I don't curse on this channel, and I like to keep it that way, so I'm not going to, but I want to. Look at this.
there was a reason for that.
Well, I didn't ask you if there was a reason for it, sir. You understood my question, didn't you?
That's correct. My first report regarding was in January.
We're talking about John O'Keefe's phone now here.
Yeah.
You did not report on the location data on John O'Keefe's phone until April of 2023, correct?
I didn't look at the extraction initially.
And you also did not report on any Apple Health data until the spring of 2023, correct?
Again, I didn't look at the phone extraction. Trooper Proctor would have looked at it. I would have loaded it and given it to him.
Oh,
Okay, so Trooper Proctor had access to the phone first, and then you took care of it, correct?
He had access to the extraction that I would load onto Cellbrite for him to look at, where you can't change the data. That is correct.
Okay. And you would agree with me that you didn't address John O'Keefe's health or location data in any formal report until that April 23 report, correct?
That is correct. I never went through it.
Right, and you submitted your report in April of 2023 after you became aware of.
it wasn't important for him to go through it because they've already decided. They decided that Karen Reed was guilty. Pin it on the girl within 16 hours. So why over a year later would he ever need to even go through location data? It didn't matter. Didn't fit with their theory of the case, which kept changing, by the way, during the trial.
An affidavit filed by the defense expert, Rick Green, in which Mr. Green extracted and analyzed John O'Keefe's location data and his movements according to Apple Health data. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Before Rick Green submitted that affidavit, no member of the state police homicide investigation team, including you, had ever looked at or at least reported on the location data for anyone present at 34 Fairview, correct?
For the devices that we had, sir?
For John O'Keefe's device,
Yeah.
for Jennifer McCabe's device,
Uh,
etc.
I can't speak to that. I don't know.
All right, but you didn't, correct?
Again, I didn't look at the extractions until later.
Right.
Yeah, so there's that. In case you forgot who Guarino was, there was a little refresher course in Guarino's smarminess, and how, it wasn't really important. Nothing to see here, folks. Nothing to see here. Look the other way. Thank you, Jerry Gray, for your super sticker. Mr. Crowley said the man we were looking at lost 32,000 text messages that proved his cop friend had repeatedly essayed a minor, Sandra, and he's lying here as well while laughing and sneering. Can you confirm for a fact that he is friends with Farwell, or was? Because I don't know about that, but I'm interested to know. Laura, thanks for the deuce. Trooperino, chief of the Look the Other Way Club. Luna's mom, 24, member for 7 months. Thank you. He's incompetent at best, corrupt at worst. And that's what I'm asking you. Are they incompetent? Are they looking the other way? Are they corrupt? Or is it a cover up in the Sandra Birchmore case? Lori Weeks, thanks for the 10. Hey, Melanie in chat. Hand pink. I've got to go for an hour or so, but I'm stunned by how much I learned. Laugh here. Other streams are no comparison. Oh, thank you, Lori Weeks. Thank you so much for your generous donation. Does this give more legs to the Karen Reed cover-up theory? Does it help Karen Reed's third-party culprit and cover-up theory that Matt Farwell was just indicted for killing a witness in federal court by the feds that also, in a parallel investigation, are investigating the Karen Reed, the John O'Keefe investigation? What say you? Jerry, thanks for the $6.99. It's very sad that Sandra was too young, too naive to realize she was pushing the monster into a corner. No fault to her, but deserves a talk. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any excuse to kill anybody for any reason. This guy was a dumb idiot, but he thought he got away with it. That's the thing. He thought he got away with it. It's been 3.5 years. Nobody's ever even interviewed him more than that 2-page interview in a parking lot that we read together. He admitted that he deleted his phone, and they just thought they didn't see anything, but they had everything. They had it all. It was uploaded. According to Guarino and what he testified to in the Reed case, we can assume that all of those extractions were uploaded into the Norfolk District Attorney's Office computers and servers. Priscilla says yes. Drop the charges. DeMarie says yes. Katie says he also just states, just kill me now, under his breath, right? When he had to read those texts, just kill me. Just kill me now. Yep. Everybody says yes. More than one thing can be true. Thanks, Janai. Thank you. Piedzu, they all knew what happened to Sandra. Coffee Nut thinks it definitely helps Karen's case. 100% yes, sure does. Kim Robinson thinks Guarino is in a deep of a cover-up. Kate says all of the above, but mostly looking the other way and corruption. Christopher says Guarino might be the reason or one of them that they won't do a retrial. Joe Kelly says, we all know what these cops were thinking. Poor SOB hooked up with a whack job who wasn't even hot. Here. Esme says, from what I heard or saw about the documents by you, Ian, and Peter, I think they're corrupt. It's too much. Yes, full stop. The banner, pin it on the girl. Sounds so loud to me now. Yep. They tried to pin Sandra Birchmore's murder on her too. Thank you. Absolutely. These guys tainted Karen Reed's case too. Yeah, think about how many other defendants are in jail because of the testimony and the cell phone extractions of these clowns that are right now banging on the jailhouse doors. Let me out too. Guarino was the the tech expert on my case. He also analyzed my cell phone data, and that's what convicted me. So obviously God doesn't know what he's doing, or he's covering for people. I need to get out now. Is he going to go on a Brady list now too? Michael says it will only help Karen Reed if truth is told by the FBI in court. Andy Bev will never allow this to happen. Yeah, a real eye opener. Pretty soon there will be no witnesses left to testify in the Karen Reed trial. You're right about that, just me. Real eye opener to some people. But can you give me your thoughts on why you think when the MSP announced that they were internally in that Buchanan, Fanning, and Tully were all under internal affairs investigation, that the next day after announcing that, they retracted Fanning and said, no, he's good. He's clear. Yay, yes. Think about that every time somebody says yes. I'm like, yay, yes. Carla says there's people actually blaming Sandra for her behavior, saying she was manipulative, a problem, slut shaming her too. Disgusting. That is disgusting. She was a child. She was a child who was manipulated and groomed by this SOB since she was 12, 13 years old. She also lost, I think, her mom and her aunt very close in time, or her mom and her grandma. I can't remember exactly who. Very close in time. She was groomed by this guy, molded by her since she was 12. Coercive. Can you say coercive control? Debbie Jo says, didn't Marcy brag about their wonderful solved crime statistics once? Oh, I'm sure he did. Scott says, that's why they're trying to cover it up. People don't understand how big a role that plays, letting other criminals to challenge their evidence in their cases. Yep, exactly. I'm saying Fanning has already been cleared. Why? Yes. Because they wanted him to be involved in the jury for Karen Reed. But it was after the Karen Reed trial that it was announced that they were under internal affairs investigation, right? Right? It was after that, after the mistrial was already declared. Mariko says, I can't even imagine the amount of individuals that are in prison due to this, both corrupt and still incompetent cabal. Ashley says, sometimes I feel like I'm watching a reality show with this case and Karen Reed, but it's actually real and scary. It is. And that's why everyone should be afraid. Karen Reed could be any one of us. And I know there were standouts today all across the country and the world for Karen Reed. Scott, I'm sure that you were there today. You want to give us type something in the chat about how it went, where you were, how many people showed up. I've been working on this today, so I didn't get a chance to watch any of the coverage. I turned on, I think, Brian LTL this morning for a little bit and someone else. And I did watch a little bit, and it looks like you guys had a really good turnout. Coffee Nut says, I would love to get Paul O'Keefe's thoughts. They're his friends, and now they're falling one by one. Well, I don't know if they're going to be his friends anymore, Coffee Nut, because I did a whole stream on the civil case that Paul O'Keefe and his mother and his father and his niece filed against Karen Reed. And I'm Karen Reed's defense attorney in the civil case. The first thing I'm going to do is third party in Brian Albert, Colin Albert, and Brian Higgins, saying it wasn't me that caused John O'Keefe's death. It was them. And then they're going to have to come in and defend themselves in court. And there's not going to be any insurance company in the world that's going to pay for their defense, and they're going to have to pay to defend themselves. So I think these friends are going to be fallen pretty soon, if they have not already, because it's going to be a big expense for them. They're going to be dragged into it because no insurance company is going to pay on this claim. No police report was ever filed for a car accident. There's no evidence that John O'Keefe was hit by a car. They're not going to just roll over and pay out a policy on this. I've talked to many bodily injury adjusters who practice or who work in Massachusetts. They're not paying. It's not going to happen. If they thought this was going to be a quick payday, it's not happening. Take a look at that stream too that I did. I don't know if it was last week, the week before. Complicit and participated in cover-ups. Christopher says Fanning might be clear from MSP, but not the feds. Could be. MD says IA is also an inside job. Internal investigations are way too iffy, in my opinion. Well, I mean, since we're here and we're all together, let's take a quick look at the internal affairs investigation that was done by Stoughton PD. And when I say quick, I mean quick. We can go into it in more detail at another time, but I just want to, I don't know why Fanning got cleared. I do not know. Is he cooperating? I don't know. I'm not an expert in internal affairs investigations, so I can't really opine on that. They didn't really say that he was clear, says Judy. They said they could find no evidence. Steven says, I believe the relationship with Birchmore started before she was 15. Yeah, she was basically alone. She lost her mom and her grandma within a year of each other. And she was only 16. A lot of trauma, arrested development, right, Gen X or Meg? Sandra never got a chance to grow up. SNS says, I'm just so grossed out by this. I absolutely understand this girl and her experience. Been there. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is so important to be talking about. No more hiding in the dark. Yep. And if there are any other victims out there of Farwell, Divine, Billy Farwell, please, please contact the FBI. Contact the FBI because they're the ones who are going to help you. And statistics show that it's certainly a possibility. No more hiding in the dark. Thank you. See if anybody, oh, thanks for standing out, everybody. Karen turned up at the standouts. I have to go back and watch it later. We cannot trust MSP's internal investigations. That's a fact. This is interesting because this was done by the town of Stoughton. So this is a 60-page report that is dated August 29th of 2022. Erica, great point. Everyone in the media keeps saying, what took so long to arrest Farwell? Nobody seems to be grasping that MSP declined to file any charges against him, full stop. This was never going to happen. You're correct. You're correct. Kathy, I guess you're behind, but Kathy's saying, chief for certain was Berkowitz's nickname. Proctor hesitated when he answered, who's the chief? Fibber? Yep. Zelda said they didn't announce it until after the verdict or the mistrial. They wanted to sweep it under the rug. Yep. Thank you, Petty Paralegal, for the 5. Massachusetts. Mass definition of trafficking, knowingly subjecting another person to forced services, recruiting, enticing, transporting, providing another person for such. That's the Massachusetts definition of trafficking. Oh, I think we're checking a couple of the boxes here, don't you? Sydney says they're going to convince Paul to drop the lawsuit. That's interesting. That is interesting. Did he roll on his colleagues, says Margaret? You mean Fanning? Shazabe, the more I review all these cases, the more I see the corruption web and how the feds are coming for all of them. Nobody's in the clear. Not even Fanning. We all go down together. It's a Billy Joel. You know, I think it's song lyrics, Don Canine. All right, I can't watch the chat anymore. I wanted to know about the standouts, but I don't see. Oh, here, Karen, Mr. Reed, and Nathan came to many standouts and took tons of pictures. Take a look later. Oh, thank you, Susie Q. I'm glad that it was a success. Thank you, Joan. I agree. So many other Explorer program victims will come forward now. Well, when I did my first stream on this, my investigation, my very, very slim investigation, which was really like a Google search, indicated to me that there were at least 194 cases nationwide of other reports of accusations against other Explorer programs nationwide. Yes, Stoughton asked them to resign. They did not file charges. That's correct. They let them resign, but they had all this information. Tammy said, I think that's why Fanning was working in the jury room for Karen Reed. His position should not be doing that duty. 100%. I agree with you 100 million percent. He absolutely should not have been there. I just want to move this so I can read it easier to you. And that was a big mistake if that's true. I mean, I've not even been able to actually 100% confirm that, but that's highly improper. Highly improper. So here's the internal affairs investigation report. It's 60 pages long, from Chief Deputy Holmes to Chief McNamara. I guess is the chief, yeah, Donna McNamara, chief of Stoughton Police Department. And this was a year and a half after Sandra Birchmore's death. And this investigation was specifically into the matter of the unattended death of Sandra Birchmore and into the possible violations of the policies, procedures, rules, and regulations of the Stoughton PD. And they conducted a long and thorough investigation. Right on page 2. Throughout the course of this investigation, there was an understanding between the Massachusetts State Police and me that should any evidence be discovered concerning criminal culpability involving anybody connected in any way to this case, that I would refer that information to the MSP for further investigation. So they go into the call, the wellness check call that came in on February 4th to Canton PD, how they responded to the scene, Canton PD, how they learned right away that Sandra Birchmore had been involved in the Stoughton Police Explorers program, and that she was involved in a relationship with Matt Farwell for an extent. They call him Detective Matthew Farwell, by the way, not Matt, for an extended period of time. Farwell had known Birchmore since she was 13. All of this is in the internal affairs investigation. And then it says here, and this is August of 2022, remember, the investigation by the Massachusetts State Police did not yield sufficient probable cause with which to charge Matthew Farwell with a crime at that time. But Morrissey would like everyone to believe that this Sandra Birchmore investigation was ongoing. It says there was so much data involved in this investigation that they had to get outside investigators, so they brought in a couple of PIs and an IT consultant to go through all of the information regarding Farwell. And it said the investigation would show that Matthew Farwell had a longstanding redacted with the victim, Sandra Birchmore, and that his twin brother, Officer William Farwell, had an ongoing blank relationship with the victim, Sandra Birchmore. The investigation also determined by a preponderance of the evidence that Officer Robert Devine had a relationship with the victim, Sandra Birchmore. The investigation shows evidence that blank behavior took place between Matthew Farwell and Sandra Birchmore, and that Robert Devine was engaged in blank of Matthew Farwell and William Farwell as his understudies. So all of this internal affairs investigation revealed that not only Matthew Farwell, but his twin brother William, Robert Devine, who was the head of the program and also an officer with Stoughton PD, were all involved with inappropriate relationships with Sandra Birchmore. Says that they did interviews and strategically planned their whole investigation here. Says there was an understanding that the MSP still maintains primary jurisdiction over any criminal activity that the administrative investigation could reveal. So remember, this is an administrative investigation, what they're doing. It's internal affairs. It's not a criminal proceeding. It's an administrative investigation. And then it says, to that extent, the understanding was that if I found evidence of a crime, I would stop the administrative process and refer this case as well as all evidence back to the MSP. Listen to this. And I put a little arrow here. One witness came forward alleging that blank by Matthew Farwell. This matter was referred back to the MSP, and the victim in that case did not cooperate with the interview process. Could that mean that another witness came forward that was also raped, assaulted sexually by Matthew Farwell, and that Internal Affairs of Stoughton referred that case back to MSP, and the victim in that case did not cooperate, and so it was never pursued? You think? Hi, Kelly Reed. Hi, Kelly. I can't wait to hear how everything went today. They probably threatened her. Yep. So, I mean, it appears to me that somebody else came forward about Farwell. MSP just looked the other way. And then they go on about the relationships between Farwell, Divine. They looked at hundreds of text messages between Farwell and Sandra Birchmore, so all this stuff was available to MSP. They had it. Because Internal Affairs was doing an investigation too, so they had all this stuff. Matthew Farwell resigned from his position with the Stoughton PD on March 11th of 2022. 1 month and 11 days after he killed Sandra Birchmore, with the resignation to take effect on April 1 of 2022. He resisted sitting for an interview in this investigation. So he didn't even let them interview him, but they still found that he violated all of these rules and regulations of Stoughton Police. Conduct unbecoming, sustained. That Matthew Farwell had a relationship with Sandra Birchmore when she was 15 years of age. MSP has a copy of this Internal Affairs. Nobody ever brought charges against Farwell. Do you see how tangled this web is, my friends? Do you see how maybe, was it Stoughton PD that wanted to get the FBI involved in this? This is horrifying. He resigned. Yeah, he resigns. Does he get to keep his pension? Sustained findings of incompetence against Matthew Farwell. Sustained findings of untruthfulness because he lied to the MSP during their investigation. And then here's William Farwell. And all the things that he admitted to in the MSP interview, which we read earlier. And this entire thing is redacted. So some of the content has communications in which William Farwell encouraged Sandra Birchmore, and it's got 5 or 6 lines that are blocked out. Then they've got all kinds of evidence that Farwell was doing activities with Sandra while he was on duty. And therefore, the allegations of conduct unbecoming an officer were sustained. Conformance to laws, sustained. I mean, it's all right here. We can go through it in greater detail if you want another time, but how is it MSP did not ever bring charges against any of these people? Here's Divine. Divine was with the Stoughton PD from October of 1999 until his resignation in August of 2022. He was the designated officer in charge of the Stoughton Police Explorers from the years 2002 to 2014. He's the guy in the picture with a little tiny Sandra Birchmore in the thumbnail of this video. That's right. How many people involved in this report also mentored Sandra? All of them. During the state police investigation into Birchmore's death, there was an analysis of her devices, cell phone, laptop, etc., and social media platforms. This part of the investigation revealed that Sandra Birchmore had sent text messages to William Farwell informing him that blank Robert Divine. She also sent William Farwell blank. So they've got evidence. And that there's direct contact on Facebook Messenger between Birchmore and Divine between November of 2020 and February 1 of 2022, which was the date of her death. There was also at least one instance where they met when Divine was on duty. Untruthfulness, sustained. Conduct incompetence, sustained. But they were all allowed to resign. Look at this. Blank told me that he had shared 4 full file boxes of documents that were Miss Birchmore's property recovered from her apartment. Blank turned these boxes over to the MSP. Lieutenant Fanning later shared with me some personal notes that he took from the boxes that he thought may be relevant to this case, meaning the internal affairs investigation. I reviewed the documents, which were mainly handwritten notes to people with whom she had personal relationships. Then they turn over Farwell's phone to the MSP, or actually to Trooper Kevin Tufts of the Norfolk County DA's office. And this goes on and on and on for 60 pages, including several pages of notes and journals. And here, September 30th of 2021, I met with Sergeant Fanning of the MSP ISU. I was given a thumb drive that contained evidence from the unattended death investigation of the victim, Sandra Birchmore. A file labeled evidence contained blank. Another file that was a PDF was titled Blacklight Case Birchmore. This file contained 50,000 pages of communications that were pulled from Birchmore's computer. The computer had been synced with her cell phone. The files were conversations, text messages, iMessages, and various forms of communications with her contacts. 50,000 pages. Are you sick yet? Are you outraged yet? Yikes. Yep. And we're going to believe that Guarino didn't know anything. Nope. 50,000 pages. Chuparino, chief of the Look the Other Way Club. Thanks, Jerry. It's very sad that Sandra was too young, too naive to realize she was pushing the monster into a corner. Oh, yeah, right. We covered that before. Tracy says, thanks for the 5. They are intentionally corrupt. No mistaking that. He's an arrogant, entitled POS. Thank you, Shy Gal, for gifting a membership, and to whoever received it, congratulations. Romy, what if anything will happen to Marcy for his complicity in all this? Remains to be seen. Some people surmise that perhaps they were investigating in the Norfolk County DA's office when all this stuff started creeping up. We don't know which came first, whether they were investigating Karen Reed, Sandra Birchmore, the office itself, the Massachusetts State Police as a whole. We don't know. But we saw federal charges filed against William Farwell. Right? That's where we stand right now. That is where we stand right now. Thank you so much, Zelda, for the Venmo. You are so very kind to thank me. So I must thank you back. Thank you so very much. And thank you, Michelle says, this case hurts my heart. Thank you so very much for your Venmo as well. You guys are really amazing. And Suzanne, thank you for the Cash App. Oh, says always and forever, my number one. Thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate you guys so much. All right, well, it is as such a holiday here in the US, and so many people probably want to go outside and celebrate this beautiful day because it is now a beautiful day. I think that we should enjoy what's left of it. It is 3:46 here on the East Coast. I wish I was on the West Coast. I wish I was. Nikki, thanks for the 5. Whoever named this the Blacklight case needs to be under the prison. Also, do we know if Divine knew the baby was Farwell's? I don't know. Do you guys know? That's a great question. I cannot confirm or deny. Yeah, the black light case, right? You know what black light is? Those of you who remember black light posters, they would show up differently if you had a purple light in your room, or sometimes things were invisible until you had that black light. Right? Hi, Indy, for watching from across the pond. Hopefully we'll get what's all coming to them. Love you too, Kay Layla. I appreciate you too, Elf and Ocean Tide. And Susan Conway sees a huge RICO case coming for the Norfolk DA and cops. Thank you so very much. Thank you. We're just trying to seek justice. We're trying to shine a light on some things that need just a little light. Thanks, mods, for keeping it classy today. Sometimes this is a difficult topic to cover because the trolls like to troll. Trolls be trolling, as always. Thank you so much, mods, for spending your holiday with me. And to all of my, please hit the like button on your way out and the subscribe button. It's free. And hit the bell so you'll know when I go live, because it's not always on a schedule. Sometimes it's impromptu and you don't want to miss a thing. So happy Labor Day, everyone, to all of us who work tirelessly to just, survive in this inflation-ridden economy and paying $8 for a gallon of milk. I feel you. I feel you all. Thank you so very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And as I always say, just, be cool, be kind, be classy. It's not hard. It's so not hard. Your life will be better for it. Smash the like button on your way out and have a great rest of your holiday for those of you here in the US. See you soon.